For lately, I've been counting down and waiting for the moment to start on the dot. I've ended up being late. So here it is. I'm overcorrecting and starting a minute early. How about that? Because I'm champing at the bit to get going on a Friday night. We can't wait for anything. As Grail has already said in the chat, can you believe it is already Friday? I hope that's a good thing for you, wherever you are. I'm excited for the weekend. It'll be nice because a friend of mine nearby in Colorado who also just recently visited Japan is going to be getting dinner with me at a local Japanese place. So our plan is to basically trade Japan stories and commiserate over how the Japanese food in Colorado is nothing like Japanese food. So that should make for a fun evening tomorrow night. Hello, hello. Yes, to the VOD people as well. If you are a VOD person and you're following on YouTube, I'm going to give you a halfway apology. And what I mean by that is if you've been following for a while, you'll notice that the last few VODs I've been a little late to upload. And the reason for that is, as I've mentioned, I'm working on a new article, which I'm excited to share with you soon, and you'll get some updates on that. But it's a half apology because I know I'm making you wait a little longer than usual, but also I'm kind of hoping that's a little bit of a backdoor incentive to nudge you to come to the stream. So just come to Twitch, hang out with us. It's fun to be part of the real life JRPG party, and we want to see you there. That's the method to my madness all along. But yes, hello, Grail. Dear friends of all persuasions, whether you're lurking live or watching the VOD after the fact, I want to welcome you to another evening of Tales of Praxis. I'm your host, Aaron Suduko, the founder of With a Terrible Fate. WithATerribleFate.com, if you haven't heard of us, is your first and final source for the literary studies of video games. If you're a big fan of the storytelling of the medium, if you've always played games the way that other people read books or sit down and enjoy the art of films, then you've found your home with us. We love analyzing these stories and trying to just better understand from a philosophical lens the language with which video games can express fictional content and can impart to us themes that stay with us for a lifetime, as all good literature does, but which we suggest the interactive nature of video games makes all the more vivid and in many ways practical for us. Yeah, seriously. Well, you'll get a little more update on that in a second, Grail. But yes, no lifing it is kind of the appropriate way of putting it. In the best of ways, I'm happy whenever I get a week like that. But for those of you who are less familiar than Grail with what it is that we're up to here, specifically, Tales of Praxis is a series which I've been running on With a Terrible Fate for the better part of a year at this point, and it focuses on just one thing: this amazing, exceptional, superlative series of Japanese role-playing games, or JRPGs, that's been published by first Namco, now Bandai Namco, for almost 30 years, if you can believe it. Starting with Tales of Phantasia way back in 1995 and rolling all the way through to Tales of Arise, which just got DLC last year. It's a series that isn't quite as well known as something like a Final Fantasy, but which is dearly beloved and has made a huge impact quite personally in the lives of many gamers and thinkers and simply people, myself included. And so when they announced that they were going to be releasing a remastered version of a game that meant quite a lot to me growing up last year, Tales of Symphonia, I decided, as a philosopher of video game stories, I'd held off on putting the analytical lens up to that series that meant so much to me for long enough. I wanted to dive in and try to better understand what is it that this series is so concerned with? What is it that it's trying to say? How does it grip so many gamers in these compelling ways over hundreds and hundreds of hours of incredibly rich and rewarding character studies and speculative representations of sci-fi and fantasy worlds and everything in between. It's the kind of series where most of the entries are not related in terms of chronology or world, and yet at the end of the day, I want to suggest when you look at them overall and play them in quick succession, you can see that they are unified by certain considerations of what it is to be human, what it is to act in the world, how one shapes one's communities and determines the future one wants for the world. In short, some of the questions that are core to how we really orient ourselves in our lives. And my hunch is that's a big part of what makes them so special, which is where the name of this series, Tales of Praxis, comes from, thinking not just about the intellectually removed theory of these stories, but more specifically about the praxis of them, the notion of the activity that they can inspire in us and how they can call us to act in different, more productive and positive ways in the world. I've mostly been studying these games in two forms. One is the live book club, book study format that you found here on Twitch, where we hang out. We roll up 3 times a week with the real life JRPG party, and Pottery has found his way in too now. Welcome, Pottery, my friend. So nice to see you back. Some of them, like those lurking in the chat now, are Tales veterans who could tell you more about the series than probably the folks who created these wonderful works. Some of them just love the storytelling of games and want to dig in and better understand and wrestle with what it is for this medium to tell a story and how we get everything out of it that we do. So no matter what your familiarity with the series is, if you're interested in those sorts of questions, encourage you to join. I'm giving a bit of a longer pitch this time around because we are rolling into a new year, and I think we're more or less on the cusp of rolling into another game on the stream, the next one being Tales of Exilia, and we'll be rolling into the sequel after that. So it's a nice time to join if you've been mulling it or hearing your friends talk about it and aren't sure what it's about. Jump in, join us, it'll be fun. And then the other part of the series is the more traditional with the Terrible Fate content, long form analyses going very in depth into the nature of these games, the actual textual content of them, and advancing philosophical arguments about what it is that they're concerned with, how it is that we can play them in certain ways to get certain value out of them. Grounded as any good video game analysis is, first and foremost, in my own experience of them and what makes them special to me, in hopes that I can share that with you, even if it doesn't supplant your own experience of them. Let it be a way to New Game Plus them, something which, if you are a Tales fan, you know is all too important and indeed foundational to these games and the way in which they represent themselves. So the reason that I've been no-lifing it, as Grail says this week, and why, Pottery, I'm going to apologize in advance. I still have not made progress further on Inscription yet, although I certainly intend to over the weekend, is that I am closing in on having my first article of the year to share with you and to publish on With the Terrible Fate. Unlike my first article of last year, it is not a book, so don't worry. You're not going to have to put aside that much time to read it, and I didn't have to put aside that much time to create it. But it is an article for Tales of Praxis. It is an article that at this beginning of the year is also going back to the very beginning of the series with Tales of Fantasia. Perhaps unsurprisingly, especially if you know me, it's already grown into a bit more of a project than I expected, which is why I'm still writing it. But I have about a section and a half left. And I'll tell you, I alluded to this earlier this week, but what's been fun about it taking longer than I expected is that right now, I'm really working through the second part of the article. So the structure, without giving too much away, is the first half of it, and really the lion's share of it, is a character study of a particular character from Tales of Fantasia. But it's a character study with the goal of basically deriving a model and a symbology through which we can use this character to read and think about other aspects of the story in Tales of Fantasia and beyond. Kind of like what I did with Demlos and Dane Nomos, the swords, that is, in Tales of Destiny and Tales of Vesperia. And then the second half of the article is actually doing some of that application work, saying, okay, given that Tales of Fantasia is part of, at least in the West, a trilogy, we're not going to talk about Nikiri Dungeon because we haven't gotten an official localization of that. But given that we have a trilogy to wrestle with, how can we apply that model that we just developed in order to read and see the individual games in that trilogy in some different and rewarding ways, and maybe even tie them all together? And the thing that's been fun and has taken me a bit more time than I expected is simply that as I've been going through that exercise of applying the model and working through the 3 games, I've actually gotten a lot more mileage out of it than I've expected. So I've been dwelling with Tales of Symphonia for a while, more so than I expected, which, given its personal meaning to me, maybe I should have expected it. But this model, at least for me, really has been helpful in putting together a lot of the pieces from that story that I've always appreciated, but never quite known how to square with each other. So it's the kind of analysis that is already proving useful to me, which is kind of the first and only measure I can offer of my work, or indeed any of us can. But I hope that also augurs that it'll be useful to you too. And as I've already said, I'm really, really excited to first and foremost breathe it out into the world, but also especially thereafter to chat about it with everyone, but especially on the Tales of Praxis stream. So I think that'll be a lot of fun. Oh, Pottery, maybe you already sent that in the chat before I said my inscription thing. I wasn't watching the chat closely enough, but if I didn't preempt you, then I didn't do my job. Either way, I apologize. I'm sure I'll have plenty to gush about on Monday if everything goes well. That's the other thing. So I'm anticipating, and I think that this is reasonable right now, that the article will be ready to share and breathe out into the world on Monday. So within a couple days for margin of error, but certainly look forward to it next week. I think that's definitely reasonable. I know, Grail. Well, this is one of the things that's been so rewarding to me about Tales of Praxis. So I don't think I said this in my intro spiel, but it's a series that meant a lot to me growing up, but I certainly didn't play every single one. And hopefully that's something that a lot of gamers can relate to, because I think some of us have trouble saying we're fans of a series, especially a long running one, if we haven't played every single entry. Like, I know I myself hesitate sometimes to say I'm a fan of Final Fantasy because I haven't played literally every single one. And I think that kind of just does ourselves a disservice as gamers, because it's certainly okay for you to like something and appreciate a certain genre or series of artwork without having played literally every one. But now that I wanted to really get into the series at a new level and try to understand what it was about, I recognized, okay, I haven't played all of them before. I want to get in and fill my gaps. I want to, understand all of the Western releases, because that's the other thing and why there are so many levels to this. It's a series that, as we know on the stream, is so huge in Japan, not as huge beyond Japan. And for that reason, not every game that was published in Japan has gotten an official Western release. So part of what has been fun and unexpected about this Tales of Praxis project is that even as I've gotten more familiar with the games that I've actually been playing and the overall corpus of Western releases, I've also become more aware than I ever was before of the specifics of the content that we never got. If you're a longtime fan of Tales of Praxis, you know that I do hope eventually, as part of the series, to find a way to get myself some kind of access that I can read and understand to those other unlocalized games and content, because I'm a completionist, if nothing else. But we're starting at least with the officially localized content, in the spirit of accessibility as much as anything else, because those are the ones to which we all have the easiest access, as we know. Yeah, Persona, I could have just as easily called out that as Final Fantasy, except I think that's where I would say it's too premature for me to call myself a Persona fan, because I played like maybe a third of Persona 5 and I loved it, but I'm not going to call myself a fan of the series before I've played through even a single complete entry. That's where I draw the line and say, then you're being unreasonable. You can't call yourself a fan at that point. The no life of it all, I don't know if this is an interesting thing to reflect on as we're getting warmed up on this wonderful Friday night, but people do sometimes ask me, and I think I mentioned this happened last week, about my research process, which it's an interesting question maybe, right? This idea of, okay, we sit down and we play games and then we have thoughts on them, and then some of us crazies decide to work those thoughts into these philosophical arguments and publish them and everything like that. What kind of happens in between? So I wrote up a very, very long account of what that looked like for my book on Xenoblade Chronicles 3, which is available for our Patreon subscribers on Patreon. But in terms of what it looks like in a more mundane and shorter process, like for this Tales of Fantasia article, really a lot of what I've been doing this week, it may or may not be what you expect. So I've played through all of the games in this trilogy very recently for Tales of Praxis, as you know, and I have reams and reams of notes and screenshots that I've taken of them with different ideas and things that I wanted to come back to. So it's a lot of sifting through the thoughts that I already had and collating them and trying to see the connections. And then the other part of it, which is maybe not as sexy, but definitely more time consuming, and I would say more important, is really sitting down with a bunch of no commentary YouTube playthroughs so that I can go and rewatch particular moments without having to go and do a full replay of the game again. And then also going back to those wonderful, kind of now antiquated resources that amazing gamers, especially in the mid-aughts, took the time and care to put together, which is complete scripts of these games. And some are more complete than others. You know, sometimes you'll have the good fortune of stumbling upon a version that not only has all the main events, but also the side quests and maybe even the skits. Sometimes you're only going to get the main events, but especially when you're trying to sift through every single moment and trying to search for particular moments and put them all side by side and get particular phrasing and even remind yourself of what warrants more looking into in terms of looking up scenes on YouTube or revisiting comments from your own playthrough. At least given me and my research style, that usually helps me to get grounded. So it's a lot of sifting through text files and video files and things that we are so fortunate to have good Tales soldiers out on the internet sharing with everyone to put together the finished product that we'll be able to talk about next week. And then, you know, somewhere in between all of that sifting, I actually write some stuff down and do some editing and some more mundane article creation processes such as that. Yeah, Grail, I'm telling you, don't worry about it, but I think you definitely seem to have the lion's share of experience with emulating Tales games. So if and when you want to chat about that, you know your boy is open to it and it'll benefit Tales of Praxis. So thank you for that. It's funny how we find our way into series, isn't it, Pottery? And thank you for making me feel seen, because especially now that we're this deep into Tales of Praxis, I feel like, well, I feel exactly as I did when I was talking about my Tales of Fantasia article at the start of the stream, right? Where I had to preemptively mention Nikiri Dungeon. Otherwise, I'd feel like I didn't know what I was talking about. But especially in the West, I feel like that is how it happens for most gamers, right? You stumble into one entry, you don't realize it's a bigger series. It's not numbered in the way Final Fantasy is, so the name oftentimes doesn't even imply there's a larger series. And then, of course, you fall down the rabbit hole and you fall in love and you discover 30 years worth of magic to unpack. And then you fall down the rabbit hole further and find Tales of Praxis. And then you're caught in our funnel and caught in our real life JRPG party. And that's how it's engineered to work. Yeah, was Symphonia the first Western release? I thought that, I don't know if that's right. I think we got Tales of Destiny and Tales of Eternia before that. Maybe in different parts of the West? Because certainly my localized copies of Tales of Destiny and Tales of Eternia are earlier than 2003. Yeah, Grail is here to remind me that I'm not losing my mind. I know. That's the real crazy lesson of Tales of Praxis, Grail. You have to read in order to write. It's all a crazy cycle, which is also a very Azalea and Tales theme, so it's all connected. That's right. The final arbiter of all validity in talking about video games, whether you knew about something or not. And if you didn't, it's not real and it doesn't count and you're not wrong. Those are the evidentiary standards we hold ourselves to on the internet. No, I'm not even going to be sarcastic about that, actually, because that is something that is taken to be true in so many corners of the internet. We care about evidence here on With a Terrible Fate and Tales of Praxis and citation and all of those good hygienics that fall by the wayside everywhere else. That, as much as anything, is why I spend so much time with the scripts and talking about the process, because I think if you don't take the time to make clear and lay bare the connections you're drawing between different aspects of these texts and why, you're not being academically honest, you're not doing your job, you're not creating a compelling argument that's going to move any understanding of the game for yourself or others. So, jokes aside, I think that really is important, and I hope that that is part of the ethos of With a Terrible Fate that can seep into the community here as well. Well, and Pottery, I'm with you there for what it's worth. Like, Symphonia was mine because I grew up a Nintendo child and came to PlayStation late. So the trolling of you aside, I can certainly very directly empathize with your situation. All right, my dear friends. Well, that was a longer review of Tales of Praxis than I was expecting, but I think it's a nice way to get settled into the weekend, especially as we're on the cusp of the first written piece in a while. I think so that we can all hold our breaths and know what we're getting in for and brace ourselves. It'll probably be around 10,000 words or so. Just funny because I was expecting it to be about half that. And I feel like Grail's default for when he's trolling me about article length is 10,000. So I guess, Grail, you know me better than I know myself. I was reflecting on just the nature of these games and how deep and wide they are in terms of their storytelling, which is obvious given how much we've drilled into them, but I think it bears stepping out of the weeds and mentioning every now and again. And I don't think it's that I'm incapable of writing shorter articles. I sometimes do. I think it's just in terms of the way in which I want to approach this series. It's very hard for me. Not impossible, because my very first article about Tales of Symphonia was pretty short and self-contained, but just the more you look at any single moment, the more it points to any number of other really meaningfully connected moments, as we were kind of alluding to at the end of the last Tales of Grace's F section, which I think is probably going to be the best segue that I'm going to get. The other thing I'll mention, broadly speaking, with the Terrible Fate wise before we go on, is I'm half thinking, since I was like out of the country over the turn of the new year and I'm now just getting my new year juices flowing with my first article and everything, I might do some year in review stuff, maybe try to make a list of the top games I played, stuff like that. But I always do that tongue in cheek if I do it at all, because you know me and how I feel about rankings. So if I do that kind of stuff, follow me or lurk on Twitter. That's where I do it. But I'm much less dedicated and committed to that, or even excited about it, than the next article, which I'm really excited to share with you. That'll be a lot of fun. Well, yes, the mega joke was 20 billion, but I don't think I'm ready for that just yet. Once I'm in full blown Yulia mode and ready to just vomit out a score of the entire history of the universe, then maybe we can talk about a 20 billion word count, but not before that. If you're also just tuning in, one of the reasons I'm even more stoked on the Tales series than before, if that's possible, is that I also just came back from a trip to its motherland with my friend and colleague Dan Hughes, with whom I'll also be podcasting this weekend. So hopefully look for a new piece of audio content this coming week too. But we went there for a couple weeks for his bachelor party. He's getting married this coming month, which I'm very excited about. And so I've taken back a lot of lessons and insights and thoughts about the Tales series, some of which, and I'll talk about this after I publish the article, but actually some of those Japan thoughts do in fact make it into this new article in a way that's maybe not perfectly obvious. So I'll be excited to ask you Praxis gamers, especially you two regulars, Grail and Pottery, whether you clock what I'm talking about when you sit down and read the article, as I know you will. But I also brought back a wealth of merch. So I've been doing some show and tell. We're nearing the end of the show and tell now, but I still have a few more fun things to share with you, especially some Tales things. One, again, I'm already sporting, and it's another Bloodborne shirt. The Daughter of the Cosmos, Ebrietas, which is a little more wrinkly and white than I would like it right now, but really just an amazingly cool, somewhat abstract representation of one of the scariest creatures in a very scary game, both in terms of the nature of her character and the nature of the boss fight and everything in between. Daughter of the Cosmos, Ebrietas. So if you want a game that has great, thoughtful, trenchant meditations on father-daughter relationships, look no further than Bloodborne, obviously. That's the one thing it's known for. And I have one more shirt, I think, that you can look forward to on the next stream. The fun thing about this, Grail, is that it's actually really nice, typically, but especially right now, to go to Japan, because the dollar is really strong against the yen. And then also so much of the kind of fan service stuff that we pay top dollar for in the States, they have just so much of it there that it's not nearly as expensive. So, I mean, don't get me wrong, my wallet is sadder than I would have liked it to be, but a lot of this is not nearly as expensive as you might expect, or as you would pay getting it when you're buying from the States, for whatever that's worth. So getting over there really is the hardest part, I would say. We could do a writing workshop on compact versus extremely verbose, Grail. I'll say for whatever it's worth, and I'll let my audience be the final judge of this. But in philosophy, one of the ways that philosophy has influenced my writing is that I've tried to be much more thoughtful and economical about the words that I use, because precision of grammar and expression matters quite a lot in the kind of argumentation that happens in philosophy. And so I do try to always be quite mindful about, what word am I using? Do I really need this expression? Do I need this sentence? Do I need this thought? And so on. And so I'll admit, like, these Tales of Praxis articles especially have gotten a little longer than I'm usually comfortable with. But for me, to my mind, it really is because there are so many minute and intricately connected moments and thoughts in these games that once I start to see all of them, I find myself feeling as if it would be a disservice to the thought or indeed to the source game to leave out some of those connections just for the sake of a shorter or, in that sense, tighter article. So I hope that's something that's valuable in the end product, but the Tales of Praxis series is still young, so definitely feel free to let me know and leave your feedback and everything else. Your very least favorite boss, Pottery? Counting the DLC? Because it's definitely, I think it cracks top 3 for me, but it is definitely not my least favorite boss when you include the DLC. Oh, I definitely don't take that as an insult, Pottery. My hope is that at least when you do stop to look up the word definitions, it's a word that is useful and seems well placed and is illuminating to you, because I don't try to use unusual words just for the sake of it. But again, especially in working with philosophy, there are sometimes especially philosophically related words or stuff that pertains to branches of philosophy that can be hard to find a more accessible synonym for. So I try not to overwrite in that way, but hopefully it's not too much of an obstruction to the reading process for what that's worth. And, if we all learn a few new words, like, that's okay, right? We've talked about learning new words from the source games themselves. So if anything, I feel like that maybe does justice to the Tales series. That's my hope, at least. Pottery, I would say, just knowing you as I do, you owe it to yourself to play the old Hunters at some point. And I say that with full awareness of the gravity it carries with it. I really do feel like I was talking about this with a buddy of mine for the first time in a long time the other day, but I think that holds up as probably Miyazaki's hardest game content, in my humble opinion, and probably some of the hardest game content ever, period. I mean, especially its last boss, like, was a piece of content I think I had to spend a solid week on in co-op before I could even beat, with the help of someone much better than myself, someone or someones. So it's you could do a whole case study in how he pulled off something that torturous yet beautiful, which is Hidetaka Miyazaki in a nutshell. Grail, I'm telling you, it's just the it's the sleeper campaign to get you into Miyazaki, so it's not going to stop. Get excited. Well, and I appreciate that, Pottery. And like I alluded to last week, there's some stuff even from beyond philosophy and from beyond video games that I found myself learning in a cool way for this upcoming article. So hopefully that translates in the article too. But yes, I'm always open to feedback from all of y'all. So please be generous with that. Speaking of Tales stuff, though, before we jump into Tales of Grace's F, yeah, and I feel you, Pottery. Definitely different once you watch it all. Yeah, so in roughly, to steal Grail's estimation, in 20 billion years, then you'll be able to play the Bloodborne PC port, and you'll be able to play the DLC at last. So Tales stuff. So then we can segue into other Tales stuff in a quasi-timely manner. I don't know if this will be as fun. It was fun for me when I found it, so hopefully it's fun for you too. I think I mentioned this great secondhand store Book Off. There are several of them in Japan. It's a chain, but there are a couple right in downtown in Akihabara, where again you can find everything pop culture you can imagine for especially cheap because it's secondhand. And so, like I mentioned, with that copy of Tales of Vesperia: The First Strike, I found their little collection of Tales animations and bought them out. Again, not that much money, but I got such wonderful collections as these Tales of Fantasia collector's editions, which I didn't have before. So it's been great, especially as I've been writing this article, to have these just beautiful boxes of Cress and Mint up on my desk to refocus me, thinking about the only characters who matter in Tales of Fantasia and the only ones I'll be talking about, he said with a wink and a nod. Also got one of Archie. It was not part of a box set, but of course I had to scoop that up. It does, doesn't it, Grail? That was my thought too, actually, so I'm glad I wasn't the only one who went there. There are a couple of these boxes of the Tales of Symphonia animation, which I hadn't seen this version of it before, but quite beautiful boxes, if not representations of the characters. And then I haven't looked into whether this is the complete animation, but it was as complete as they had. 7 volumes of Tales of the Abyss, which is cool again for me just to see the different characters they highlight and the way in which they highlight them. So you got Luke and Tyr and Mew on the first box. And then, well, we can just blow through them, but got Guy and Natalia with Luke. And then Jade and Annis come in. And then one of my favorite moments in the game, which I talk about at length in my study, Luke with his hair shorn in his hands. And you can see there how the locks in front of his ear have been totally retained in a way that doesn't quite come through in his character model in the game. But again, if you're familiar with my article, is very important to thinking about the Kabbalistic and Jewish aspects of the game. Then you've got Jade with his best friends and nemesis hanging out on that one. And good old Vandistelka Grants with the other half of Luke. And Ion. May he rest in peace. So, those little collections. And one thing that I was interested in checking out, which I'll confess I haven't yet, is there's enough English on them that I wonder whether there are subtitles in these. I kind of assumed when I got them that there weren't any, but I'm interested in checking it out now because it would be really nice to watch it with subs if that's an option. My answer to your question is yes, Grail, which I think is the only appropriate answer. I don't think I have looked at that opening of Fantasia Grail, so I'll definitely have to check that out. Archie definitely gets a lot of prominence, and it's interesting because, so I got, I think the PSP version of the game when I was in Japan also, which has different cover art, but it's still just Crescent, Mint, and Archie on the cover, interestingly enough. So no suggestion of Klaus, nor of Suzu, nor of a certain archer who I'm sure won't come up again for any reason. I wanted to see quickly if there was any if there were any inserts here. This is kind of neat. Get a lot of character sketches for Tales of Fantasia. So for instance, speaking of Suzu, and then our boy, the handsome golden locked Douse on the other side, as Martel refers to him. And then I think there might have been some special stuff in this box for Symphonia. So let me just check that quickly before we march on. Is there anything? The packaging is always the last hurdle, as we talk about. Another book. Okay. Well, it's not something so much as a really nice box art. So look, it's almost a sketch of Lloyd actually getting drinks with his dad, Kratos, and Colette horrified in the background, which is a sketch I had never seen before, and is a fun little extension of the story in a way that you don't get in the game itself. So there you go. It was worth opening it for that. Well, we don't know. Maybe maybe it's another timeline that was opened up by the grace of the Eternal Sword, where they can be the appropriate age for drinking together and in the same world. You never know. Japan has certainly come up with more fanciful explanations for why something that ought to be underage drinking or illegal actually isn't, as I'm sure we all know. All right, dear friends. Well, let me get organized on my limited desk here for a moment. There we go. Yeah, I feel you, Grail. Douse is certainly goals for a very specific kind of tortured and weird individual. He has a specific aesthetic, say that at least. All right, friends. Well, 33 minutes on a nice, easy Friday evening. Not too bad, I should say. But we did leave things at a pretty exciting juncture in Tales of Grace's F, so I do want to get back to that. I wasn't able to save, and that was how I discovered that the PS3 actually doesn't have a sleep function, which I had forgotten. So I had to turn it off, but don't worry, I did. I took the time to get back to where we were at the end of the last stream before we started up this one, so we're all good. I'm excited to see how this evolves. I think I had one thought after Wednesday that I don't remember, but I'm sure it'll resurface. I will just remind everyone we're at this juncture where we've just discovered basically the Eleth from the core is out of control. The little queen, as best we can tell, is maybe the sentience of Fodra, maybe the immune system protecting the core. It's not totally clear at this point. But the thought is that basically in order to halt the insane overflowing of corruptive Eleth from the core, Asbel is going to need to use Lambda's power in order to absorb and filter that Eleth. And that's something that Asbel can't do on his own without risking life and limb. So his plan is to trust Lambda enough to give Lambda control of Asbel's body for just the amount of time to filter that Eleth, and then trust Lambda not to ruin Asbel or go dark side again or anything like that. And speaking of intersectional connections with the other games, what I mentioned was really cool and top of mind to me was that to me, in that light, it seems like the kind of confrontation we're coming up against here draws in a really cool way on some central thoughts from Tales of the Abyss, with what Luke has to do to rectify the world at personal cost, and Tales of Eternia in terms of what it is to be inhabited by a different perspective and the trust and kind of spiritual submission that goes along with that. And then, of course, third, but certainly not least, that idea of what it is for a planet to have a sentience and express a kind of desire and extend its will through inhabitants of the planet, like we get in Tales of Arise. So especially given that now we're deep enough into Tales of Praxis to have that shared background of a wealth of Tales games, really excited to see how this fourth act is not only extending and commenting on the themes of the base game, but also how it does that juxtaposed against those other games. So we can keep an eye on that as we go on. Yes, the Flanoir scenes that happen in outer space on Telos Astu. I'm excited for those. Maybe the other half thought I had was, and this is not a thought so much as a framing, but you might notice I titled this stream I and Thou, which is an allusion to a work by someone who I'm going to have to look up again because I can never remember his name. Martin Buber, which is just about 100 years old exactly at this point, and kind of a religious and philosophical work thinking about different relational stances that people can take towards things and ultimately contemplating the human relationship with God. But his basic conceit was the idea that there's a difference between relating to something as an object separate to oneself, which he called the I-it relationship, and relating rather to something such as a person or a living being or ultimately God as something that is an aspect of oneself and is undifferentiated from the I, which he called the I-thou relationship. And so I got thinking about that. It's such a poetic way of framing things for me that it's oftentimes on my mind, especially with thinking about the kind of slippery boundaries between players and avatars and how so many games play with those. And so especially given this whole act's concern with the slippery boundary between Asbel and Lambda, and now Asbel pushing that boundary further for the sake of his friends in the world and trusting Lambda, while also raising the question of where does the boundary of Fodra end and all of the beings created by it begin, Sophie and Lambda and all those other beings. That notion of I and thou was pretty vivid in my mind, just as a way of thinking about how much are these different players in this story different from one another, how much are they aspects of the same I and thou. So something to keep in mind as we push on here. Yes, this is, yeah, I say 100 years old to make clear that actually it is not just a an allusion to Persona. Persona, as it happens, is a great series for alluding to many things other than itself, with pretty deep and rich intellectual and philosophical roots. But yeah, Persona has definitely made its mark on that phrase. I always forget about that. Thank you for reminding me, Grail. Like I said, did not finish that game, but intend to at some point. And then I'm not going to say anything about your other comment because I don't want to spoil anything, and that's a moment that I'm dying to talk about. If we end up streaming that, or just if I end up writing about it and saying, okay, now that I've written about it, I'll just give a blanket spoiler warning and we could talk about it more. But yes, I would say just the only thing I'll say about it is I'm not surprised because that is so perfectly and uniquely Eternia to me in a way that really points to the magic of what makes that game special and why it's still sitting with me months after I've played it, more vividly even than some things that I played after it. All right. The last thing I'll say is I know we were definitely improving the balance of audio finally last stream, so thank you for everyone's patience with that. I tried to play with it a little bit more before this stream, so the overall like master audio, I haven't gotten around to messing with that, Pottery, so you might still encounter that same issue, and I apologize for that, but hopefully it will be much easier to hear the voices of the characters and the background music and everything that's at a level with me, so that I'm not shouting over them or vice versa. But as always, let me know, and we can change that on the fly if need be. All right, dear friends, happy Friday night to you. I hope it's been such a rewarding week. I hope that you have good gaming ahead this weekend. Welcome back to Tales of Praxis. Let's see some outer space Flanoir scenes, as they shall be officially known from here on out.
You're more foolish than I thought, if you're willing to entrust me with your body. Once I take over, that which you call Asbel will cease to exist.
That which you call Asbel. Interesting turn of phrase.
Do you think you can return whole from such an ordeal?
Yes, because I believe in you.
On what basis?
You don't need a basis to believe in someone. But if I had to give reasons, it's because you went out of your way to protect us. Also, you could have taken me over a dozen times by now, right? But you haven't. That's why.
How foolish.
Besides, I'm only lending you my body. And things that are borrowed must always be returned.
Pa, do not lecture me like some mewling human child.
It's got nothing to do with being human. It's about doing the right thing. And besides, you and I are sharing this body, remember? We need to watch each other's backs in order to keep things running smoothly.
The word fool fits no one better than the likes of you.
Amazing dig.
A man who trusts anyone based on nothing more than his own flawed reason. You humans continue to amaze. But I also see now that foolishness is a deeper trait than I once believed.
Thanks, Lambda. I think.
I accept your proposal. I will borrow your body and absorb the core's elef. But be warned, notable strain will still remain on your body afterwards. You had best prepare yourself.
Got it. Thanks for all the help, Lambda. Hey, Sophie. Can't sleep? I was just going to visit the others. Wanna come?
Okay.
All right then. Let's go.
I love that scene. I'm going to give myself an Aaron Terrible Fate challenge to see if we can work through all the resolution scenes without me stopping to comment too much on all of them one by one, because I think it'll be better to have them all in view before we talk about it. The one thing that I'll say I just had to write down, because for me, especially thinking about the kinds of things I've been considering in the series, it was such a beautifully written and beautifully translated line that also cuts right to the heart of what I think Asbel is about as a protagonist. And we could talk about this more once we're done with Graces and have it all in view. But that line, you don't need a basis to believe in someone. I love that. And I love, too, that challenge, because Lambda seems to have clearly articulated the stakes in a way that is appropriately mystical, I would say, given the rest of Graces, saying, you know, you're basically going to disintegrate as an individual when I take over, in the sense that whatever it is that makes you you will just disperse into this broader void of being. And so the question is less, can you trust Lambda to give your body back to you, and more, are you confident that you'll be able to reconstitute yourself and find all of your pieces and put this thing you call Asbel back together again after that? Which is such a higher bar, and also a challenge that, similarly to what I was saying about Asbel, feels so core to the questions of identity that Graces in particular within the Tale Suite seems centrally concerned with. Yes, also the word fool fits no one better than you. It's a great line. For everything else we say about Lambda, let us not forget that his most important trait is being chock full of sick burns. Alright, so you said Hubert first, Grail. Let's go find our bro. Little bro, where are you? Little bro! Oh, it was easy to find you. What you thinking about? Being blue? Ah, why you so blue, Hubert? Don't be blue.
So Lambda isn't enough? Now you have to take in the entire core as well?
Yes.
You know, it's the rest of us who suffer the most for your damn hero complex.
Oh, he was looking at Pascal. I couldn't see her from the screen where we approached him, but now you can clearly see her over there. I love that.
I'm sorry, Hubert. I don't want you to worry.
Bluebird. You know why, Pottery? It's because Edna's not in this game. Otherwise, we would have heard that like 2 seconds after she met Hubert.
Oh, I'm not worried. I'll be fine. But if something happens, I don't think Sophie will ever recover. Isn't that right, Sophie?
Yeah, that's day
You're
one
not
Edna
just the
stuff.
Lord of Vaunt now, Asbel. You're also Sophie's father. So I hope you're strong enough to stay alive and face your new responsibilities. Hear me well, Lambda. If you refuse to release my brother, I will not be held responsible for the consequences.
It's okay, Hubert. You can trust him.
So then, you would stand against me to protect this fool? Perhaps it is you who are the fool to risk your life. Still, reckless courage has its own kind of charm. I would like to see more of your idiocy. Depending on your actions, I might just have to show you my thanks.
What is this voice? This isn't Asbel. Is this Lambda?
This is really cool. So Lambda can communicate with other people in the same way he's been communicating within Asbel's mind.
See you tomorrow, Hubert.
Yes. See you tomorrow.
Good night, then. Yeah, I like that comparison, Pottery. The same kind of spiritual energy. Same but different, with the difference between Shepherd and well, whatever we want to call Lambda. Oh my god. Grail Automat is your best friend. It'll be cool to do a review of all their growth, because my instinct is that across the party, this is one of the growth heaviest of the Tales games we've considered so far, but I don't know. This is why I want to do a review. I don't know whether that's my bias or if that stands to reason. It's interesting too, because there's no way I'm not going to be able to talk between these scenes. I'm sorry, but it's interesting because with Lambda, right, and with that conversation with Hubert and the intonation of his voice, he still seems so superficially resentful and distrustful, but I think he's playing it in this really compelling way where one of two things I think could be true. Either he really still doesn't trust anyone and is planning on betraying them the moment he has access to Asbel's body, or two, perhaps more interesting, and what I hope is the case, based on the way Lambda was grew up and was treated and was abused, he can really only make sense of any kind of relationship through these kind of cynical, antecedently distrustful means. And so this is what it looks like for him to reach out and connect and bond with someone like Asbel or Hubert. And it's not quite the same thing as distrusting them. It's more of Lambda trying to figure out how to build trust in full view of his own hang-ups about humanity and other people, like building a trust that is native to his language and the way that he has come to see the world, but can yield more positive effects than would have been possible previously before Asbel took him in. Yeah, I hope we get more of those Lambda conversations. I have a feeling that we will in these scenes, so it'll be interesting to try to track his psychology through those. Yeah, a kind of epistemic resting bitch face, I think, is a much funnier and more succinct way of describing what I was saying was option 2, actually, Grail, so thank you for that.
Now, let me just give it the old wham bam. What are you doing, Pascal?
Just whamming and bamming, you know how I roll.
Okay, so I was thinking how unfair it was that Asbel had to absorb the core. So I've got a new plan. Say hello to Mecha Asbel.
Hilarious.
That's not Asbel.
Now see, if there were a statue of Mecha Asbel, that's the kind of statue I would get and happily add to my collection. It's not him!
What? Oh, come on. It looks totally like him.
Pottery, that definitely counts as resetting the Vesperia timer, and I'm perfectly happy with it.
No, it doesn't. But what are you planning to do with that exactly?
See, I was thinking we could just have Lambda zap himself into Mecha Asbel here before he absorbs all the Ellet.
How about it, Lambda?
Impossible.
He says no.
He says that's the most horrifying thing he's ever seen in his entire existence. And he's seen some shit, as you'll recall.
Come on, Lambda! This plan is awesome! Fine. I guess it really doesn't look like you after all.
You think that's the problem?
Well,
That's what I was
Lambda's
gonna
only
say.
helping because he likes you, yeah?
I think it's more complicated.
So if he doesn't like my robot, it must be because he doesn't look like you.
Sound reasoning, Pascal.
Don't mind me.
Your people have always been arrogant. Too much knowledge will not save a civilization. It can bring only ruin. And yet, you persist in believing your knowledge can aid others.
Hey, stop saying saying things.
Huh? I didn't say anything.
Your technology is too primitive to stand a chance of containing me. And yet I am curious to see what your determination can accomplish. Give your all to the effort, child of Amarcia.
Okay. I'll stop trying to get you out of Asbel.
I'm surprised you'd give up so easily.
It's an interesting question, Grail. I'm still kind of hung up on that too. This is slightly different than what I said before when we talked about it, but I feel like maybe it's an instantaneous transmission in the sense that like he's just expressing thoughts that the recipient like immediately receives and intuits. So we have to hear it as extended across time just because that's how speech works. But maybe the explanation is like Pascal touches Asbel and instantly has this thought in her head, and that's why she's so freaked out by it and recoils. That's another possibility anyways.
Oh, I'm not giving up. I just think it's time for me to sit back and see what Lambda's all about. Maybe I can turn Mecha Asbel here into a weapon for tomorrow. Pascal, don't forget to take a bath.
The important things.
Yeah, I know. Good night.
Do you though? Do you know? We're concerned you don't know. I love you. Sleep tight. I guess another option in terms of what's going on with Lambda, when he said like you accomplish nothing and you have such hubris, but I'm still interested in seeing what will come of your determination. Like we talked a few streams ago about how the entire premise of this act was that Asbel made this promise to show Lambda the world and give him something to believe in. So it would almost be interesting, and again, this is me speculating with no idea as to where the story is actually going, if Lambda, when he got control of Asbel's body, turned into a villain again, but more because he was interested in seeing how the party would react to that and testing their mettle and conviction and seeing if they were people who were actually good-natured and trustworthy even when things didn't go their way. So kind of to judge their character and strength of heart rather than just becoming villainous and betraying Asbel for the sake of, you know, taking control and destroying humanity in the way that he tried in the base game. That would be interesting to me too. Well, remember, Grail, she crucially has at least two character traits. So one is does not take baths, and the other is desperately needs to touch people. So both of those traits were on full display in that scene. Drag, we can't go to the basement anymore.
Still busy, I see.
She just wanted an excuse to hit Asbel in the face. This is just a long walk to that accomplishment.
Yeah, just tinkering with stuff for tomorrow. What are you doing up, little bro? You all worried about your big brother?
In a way.
Aw, he's gonna be fine. I don't think Lambda's gonna try anything funny.
But even so.
I getcha. You never know what's gonna happen until it does, yeah? But gosh, little bro, you sure do worry about Asbel a lot.
Stop calling me that. I'm a grown man. Why, even now I'm considering an offer of marriage.
To you.
You're getting married, little bro? Aw, congratulations!
No, that's not... I'm not going to accept.
I mean, he's definitely grown compared to that horrifying mecha Asbel next to him, so it's all relative, right?
What? How come?
Because I love you.
Because...
Say it. Say it!
Because my every waking thought is consumed by you.
Oh! Yo, he actually said it! I wasn't expecting that from Tales of Grace's F. That is awesome. Oh!
Yeah. I guess I kind of figured that.
She's so sheepish.
You did? I mean, well, that's not a bad thing, is it?
Don't you worry, little bro. I promise to take a bath before the ceremony.
The most Pascal response.
Hey, I totally understand. You don't want some smelly friend stinking up your fancy wedding.
Oh, because she thinks he's concerned about her being well-groomed for his wedding to someone else.
So I'll take a
Hilarious.
bath
Never
and use
mind.
soap and everything.
Well, Hubert tried. I wasn't expecting he would even actually try.
Okay, now let's see what you can do, Mecha Asbel.
An attempt was made.
Huh? It blew up! And I'm usually so good at this kind of thing.
Damn. Maybe I'll have to build Mecha Sophie instead. It's interesting to me, Grail. This is something we should talk about once we're done with Act 4 also, because that's true, very uncommon Hubert L. So we've been, I would say rightly, praising the game throughout for its really deft use of comedy to add texture to the overall experience of the story, because it has such emotional highs and lows and moments of pathos and moments when we're laughing out loud. And I've been really impressed by that throughout. But this is one moment where I almost want to ask the question, does the comedic default hold it back a little bit? Especially in light of the more recent model we now have of Tales of Arise and Beyond the Dawn, because I would say, especially with Beyond the Dawn now, which we've played together, I feel like that world and story handles considerations of marriage very thoughtfully, with a lot of justice done to the individual nature of the characters involved. And kind of similar to what you were saying about Pascal taking baths, I feel like I'm almost left wanting more by virtue of the fact that it seems like the game is not taking this as seriously as it could. Because I do feel like you seem to be saying too, Grail, I think there's a version of Hubert and Pascal where you can see Hubert being just so taken with Pascal's free spirit of innovation and the way she just like gets things done and thinks outside the box and reconfigures the relationships in her life in a way that is just like positive and empowering, like with her sister, and cynicism doesn't even enter her worldview as something to consider, and can kind of help him work through a lot of the things that have been hard for him since he was a kid. But instead we get a joke about baths. So I don't know. I'm not sure. Yeah, well, that's why I said put a pin in it until the end of Act 4, Grail. So I'm sure we have further to go. Interesting comparison, though, Pottery, because I don't disagree. And also, we've talked before about how heartfelt and touching the end of that side quest with Rita and Estelle is. Speaking of super heartfelt, right? So it's the presence of examples like that that makes me just want to reach a little bit more for something here. But yeah, I get it. I take the point. Pascal is Pascal, and there's an aspect of her character that definitely resonates with the way that they're having things play out.
Asbel, Sophie.
Can't sleep, Richard?
I keep trying, but I fear it's a lost cause. I can't stop thinking about tomorrow. About what I would do if you ended up like me.
Oh, brother.
I told you, that's not gonna happen. Remember when we were young? It made me happy to know that you trusted me. When I grew up, I made one terrible mistake after another. But it helped me to know I could support you. Without that trust, I wouldn't be the man I am now.
I don't disagree, Pottery, but this is also Act 4 of Tales of Grace's F, right? So like, I feel like they had the play to get there if they wanted to. That's all I mean. But yeah, no doubt. I mean, part of what's so special about the flow of these games and the way in which they explore relationships is they take the time to make it feel really credible and believable when it finally culminates.
It's the same with Lambda. I need to trust him. I need to believe in whatever made him protect us.
When Lambda was inside me, I was enslaved by him. I wasn't able to face him the way you can.
We haven't spoken in a while, Richard.
I don't want to interrupt this great scene of Richard revisiting Lambda, but I will say that this is something to put a pin in when we go back to thinking about Tales of Graces after it's all over. Like, I think it's interesting to ask the question. They started discussing it in Act 4. Is it something that we can read as having been on their mind and that they were exploring through the whole game, or was it something that was more sui generis out of Act 4? Because I think if the former, I think you could make a case that it was still coming to fruition in a way that was the culmination of the whole game, even if they only first decided to give a name to it and speak about it in Act 4. If the latter, then of course it's not as developed and they're not going to reach as developed a point with it. Yeah, definitely. Well, let's think about that. We can put in our head now thinking about previous moments in the game, and maybe some stuff will bubble to the surface before we're done here.
We used to feed off resentment, and it allowed our hatred to grow strong. We believed we could save the other from loneliness. But I don't need to tell you how that turned out. You and I are both indebted to this man. I will repay my debt. The path you choose is up to you.
Lambda.
Wow.
Asbel. I just heard Lambda's voice. Sophie. I think Asbel and Lambda are actually getting along. You won't have to fight him again. I've decided to place my trust in Lambda as well.
Thanks, Richard.
Can you hear me, Lambda? I know that I failed you. And so you may not care what I have to say.
Oh, wow. And so we don't even hear the rest of what he presumably has to say to Lambda. That's just for them. I loved everything about that scene. I'll tell you, that little conversation made me feel like I'm going to have to write a character study of Richard at some point, to be honest. I think it was so cool that Lambda very clearly was able to be honest and straightforward with Richard in a way that he wasn't with any of the other characters, saying we were looking for something from each other and weren't able to give it to each other. Asbel saved both of us, and we have to figure out our own ways to repay him. So all questions about Lambda's intentions, I would say, resolved at this point, right? Also the fact that Richard, based on his special relationship with Lambda and everything he went through when he was antagonized to the party, is able to actually speak up and vocalize to Asbel what no one else has said. Hey, I just heard Lambda's voice when I touched you, and I want you to know, I don't think you need to be worried. And also, wow, what a heartbreaking coda to add to the Richard Lambda story, to add this idea that Lambda wasn't just trying to drag Richard down, he was actually, even then, even if he couldn't articulate it, looking for some kind of redemption and comfort and safety that maybe Richard could provide to him because Richard could relate to him. And instead they ended up, of course, exacerbating each other's worst qualities. But that idea that Richard just quietly said, I know that I failed you, whereas Asbel, of course, was able to help both of them. Wow, what a complicated portrait of someone we only see off and on throughout this entire adventure. I've decided to place my trust in Lambda as well. I'm telling you, Grail, you're Automod's best friend, though it hasn't been for a while. That's interesting, Grail. It would be... I would have fun going back in our post-game thoughts and thinking about that too, because like I think we talked about with Vesperia, I can see that kind of reading with like Rita and Estelle. At first pass, I don't totally get that same feeling from Richard and Asbel, but that might be my own bias, or just that that's not how I was reading it. So it'd be fun to think about, and for you to point stuff out in a way that I might have missed. Yeah, well, I'll tell you. This article I'm working on would be even longer if I did a further thing, which was part of me wanted to then go on after talking about this particular character study in Fantasia and say like, oh, and once you see this kind of character in a Tales game, it invites you to think about a particular type of character in other Tales games in similar ways. And I was thinking like, oh, maybe I'll do these short little character studies of like Richard and Zavid and other characters that kind of fit this mold in ways that we can talk about after I've published it. But then I said, Aaron, that's when the article is going to become way too much of a mammoth, way too unfocused and not useful. So instead, what I'm thinking is I'll publish it as kind of another notch in the Tales of Praxis publications, and then hopefully use it as a jumping off point for some of those other character studies that I think will be really fun and rewarding for us. So yes, I appreciate the vote of confidence and excitement for the Richard one. I really do feel like there's so much there on his own and in terms of his relationship with Asbel and Lambda and everything else. So stay tuned. I wouldn't be surprised if we got that one. The caressing, I could see the caressing, yeah.
Tomorrow we risk all for our homeworld. Don't you two think you should get some rest?
Captain, I can't sleep. Will you just talk to me?
Oh.
All right. You said you were scared of losing the ones you love, right? I know how you feel. I know it better than most. But you must not let yourself be ruled by fear. Let me ask you a question. What's the best way to be with those you love?
To protect them?
Correct. But to do that, you must transform your fear into strength.
Fear into strength.
However, strength alone is not enough. You must also believe in those you love and honor their feelings. The better you know a person, the easier it is to keep them safe.
That's a really cool line, too.
You are an ancient creature, Sophie. But in many ways, you are still a child. Life has lessons yet to teach you. Some will be enjoyable, and some will come with pain. You must face the painful lessons and learn from them. It's the only way to grow stronger. When we have finished this business with Fodra, you will be stronger for it.
And then I can protect you all?
I have no doubt.
Thank you, Captain.
Same to you. Good luck tomorrow, Asbel.
The fear of loss is strong in you. It is a fear honed sharp against a stone of countless pains. By showing these children the true path, you show it also to yourself. Fascinating. May your devotion to the path be a shining example to those around you.
It's true. Perhaps they teach me more than I know.
Captain Malik?
Enough chatter. Get yourselves to bed, and that's an order.
Yes, sir.
By teaching the students, you teach yourself. Something that's so deeply Malik. And resonates with what I wrote about Kratos back in my study of Regal. I think they have some shared DNA, these two. Get yourself to bed. That's an order. A really interesting structure for these Flanoir scenes, having the trio of Asbel and Lambda and Sophie going around rather than just one person. Yeah, it's funny, Grail and Pottery. Like, I'll say this for whatever it's worth, and I am so excited to dig into it more together when we inevitably play Vesperia together. But while the romantic tenor of their relationship was something that I considered, it was something that definitely was not front and center in my consciousness for me until you brought it up after I published my study, Pottery. So I know that perhaps on the greater scale of JRPG romance representations, it's relatively in your face, but I think in terms of being perfectly explicit, I at least did not get that feel from playing through the game. So I think that's part of why I was happy with the definitive edition. I felt like it gave much more like nuance and contour to a lot of relationships in ways that fleshed out the individual characters, but without boxing them in too much to particular labels or rigid specifications relative to one another. But that's just my take. Did we get everyone? I'm trying to remember. So we have, I think we did. We got Hubert and Pascal and Richard and Malik, and we have Asbel and Sophie. Yeah. So now I think we just have to go back and go to bed. All right. Well, we'll have plenty of time to think about it one way or another, Grail, because, oh, we're still going down. Got it. Since we're doing Exilia and Exilia 2 at least first, but yeah, we've joked around about a co-op run before. I think that could be a lot of fun with a game or another, and Vesperia seems like a natural candidate. But I also feel like, oh, Sharia, how could I forget Sharia? I feel like it would also be a very natural game for you to do a really complicated and hard challenge with. I'll bet Pottery would have advice. I could also probably noodle it, but I don't have any really good ones off the top of my head. I also feel like you're much more creative with those than I am, so I feel like it's better to ask yourself. Don't use Judith. I think I cleared that challenge just by default. She wasn't one of the mains in my party.
Sharia? Hey, Sharia.
Oh, true. You know your audience, Pottery. I'd forgotten about his tendency for spears.
Are you still mad?
I'm worried, Asbel. I'm not mad.
And just disappointed.
Oh, sorry. Look, can't you find a way to trust Lambda?
I want to, I do, but I just...
Listen, let's make a promise.
A promise?
I've learned something from all this. When I was young, I used to think my family was holding me back. But now I know they acted that way because they cared for me. So I've been wondering if it's possible for me to care about someone in the same way. And I can think of only 2 people who might fit the bill.
2? Please don't tell me you're planning to adopt another Sophie.
Yes.
No, Sharia. What I need is someone to look after Sophie with me.
Oh.
This person has always been close to me, but I've been too stupid to see it. So when we get back, I plan to tell her. But right now, I need you to trust me. And trust Lambda. And wait for us both. Will you do that, Sharia?
Asbel, if you make a promise, you have to use your pinky.
That's the law, Asbel.
I suppose so. Okay, Sharia. It's a promise.
Really interested to see how this plays out, and how explicitly it plays out.
You know the preciousness of life as you do.
Huh?
The man before you is a fool.
I tell him all the time, It's totally hilarious.
But beneath his idiocy hides a layer of steel. I owe him much, and shall repay that debt to the best of my abilities. However, this fool dared to challenge even me. Who knows what he might do in the future? He's already shown that he'll throw his own life away for the sake of others. Let him know you understand this, and hold him to his promise.
That voice.
Sorry, what?
Nothing. Listen to me, Asbel. If you don't keep your promise, I will never forgive you. Don't you say something for a promise? Cross your heart, hope to die, stick a needle in your eye. Okay, I'll look for a needle.
Wow, you guys are serious. I guess I have to keep my promise, huh?
You'd better believe it.
I presumed it was also
Now,
the kind of
Sophie,
thing Grail...
Make sure to take a bath and change your clothes before you sleep, okay?
I presumed it was the kind of thing where once Asbel took Lambda into his being, Lambda kind of got to experience Asbel's memories and see what they had been through on the journey together. So that was kind of my inference to best explanation there.
Okay. All right. I'll see you both tomorrow.
Sorry, looking at your face, I started thinking back on something my dad once said. When I first brought you home, he told me I'd never be able to take care of you. I wonder what he'd say now. I bet he'd still say I couldn't do it. I often wish I could see Dad again, just once. He was a good man, you know. He wanted the best for his people's future, and for ours. I want to carry his hopes and dreams into the future.
Into the future.
I want to help the people of Lant live happier lives, even if just a little. And I want the same happiness for their children and their grandchildren and onward. But I've only got one life, you know? There's only so much I can do. I guess it'll be up to my descendants to carry on the legacy. I hope they're up for it. I hope they think this dream is as important as I do. Too bad I can't stick around and see how it turns out, huh?
I'll stick around. I'll stick around as long as it takes. I can tell your children and grandchildren. I can tell everyone about your dream. Will you trust me with your dream, Asbel?
Sophie.
It's hard to believe I was so worried for all this time. You'll never be gone, even after you die. Because your dream will live on. I have a purpose now, Asbel. I will see your dream fulfilled.
Wow.
You're really something, Sophie. You know that?
I loved all those scenes. And what a testament to this game that not only can it have great resolution scenes in its base game, but it can come back and do a fourth act and one-up itself effectively, as far as I can see. But yeah, gosh, that last one, I had this moment I don't know whether you had it, because Grail, I completely agree. It was so important that we saw all of that side content with Aston. Um, and I saw Aston and just such an older and fatherly face of Asbel when he was just sitting there saying, man, you know, I hope that the people who come after me think that this dream of mine is important. It's just such a beautiful and humbling and deeply human sentiment, I think, because it's one thing to find your dream in the first place, which Asbel has put in all the work to do. But then that's like the JRPG version, I think, or JRPG riff on this theme of death that they've been thinking about throughout Act 4, saying, all right, it's one thing for a person to literally physically die, but what is that second death, the big death after the little death? It's when their dreams die, right? It's when people, not even when the last person speaks their name for the last time, but when people no longer understand the things that that person thought was important. And for Asbel to have that moment of clarity and smallness, and for Sophie to pick up that mantle by going from, you know, being bound to a purpose that she didn't understand and didn't want, to then being free and without a purpose, to then being pulled in by her own heritage, to now figuring out what it is to take on a purpose as something that can empower her and shape her identity in the way that she wants, and can make meaning out of her relationships in a way that honors Asbel's feelings and makes it easier for her to protect him, like Malik was counseling her. Just what a wonderful bow to tie together basically all of those scenes in a single moment between Asbel and Sophie, and implicitly Lambda. Really interesting too, because we know that Lambda was still there and he spoke in all of the other scenes. He didn't speak to Sophie, he didn't speak to Asbel, he didn't interrupt them, he just let them have that moment. And I had that thought during Cheria's scene too. I feel like there's an interesting sense in which maybe you could go back and read those scenes as Lambda in each of those conversations giving the person what he felt they needed. Like even someone like Pascal, who he was egging on, saying like, knowledge only causes suffering and yet you continue to innovate. I wonder what you're going to do next. Like you can see, based on what we were talking about, like the kind of person Pascal is, why that might motivate her in a way that was productive and spoke to her essence. So might even be some skillful means stuff happening with Lambda and the way he's treating them as well. But yeah, it's the more of these games I'm playing for Tales of Praxis, Grail, to your point, the more I feel like this has come up on the stream before, but there are so many cases of optional content where it's not really optional to understanding the game, but the fact that it's optional and you have to choose to see it says something important representationally about that nature of the content. For instance, you have to make an effort to uncover your family history and lineage that isn't just given to you in the way that a main story is, in the case of Asbel and Aston, something like that, right? And yes, pottery, what a beautiful way in which that scene also reconfigured Sophie's understanding of death. Like you can see how much more at peace she was just by being able to make that pact with Asbel. And giving herself a new sense of purpose, as we said. All right, so I think we go get some rest. All right, all the way back now. Yes. Well, remember, speaking of things to dovetail between the main game and Act 4, one of the big things that I spent a lot of time soapboxing about in the main game is this idea that, as Malik is the poster child for, there are some aspects of ourselves that only make sense relative to certain relationships. So if we had a past that only involved certain people, we're not necessarily going to be able to talk about it or share it with people who don't have any point of reference. And that can be pretty isolating, but figuring out ways to know people in spite of those limitations can be what it takes to actually reach out and help Lambda rather than collapsing inward and sharing his loneliness like Richard does. And so to take that kind of thematic nugget and then think about, as Act 4 is doing, and as you say, Pottery, you know, there's like the idea that you can come to fully know and 100% relate to someone is a fiction, and that shouldn't stop you from getting to know them well enough to help them and support them. Shows a lot of awareness and depth, I think, and is probably a big part of why at this point in this kind of Act 4, these really feel like some of the most honestly matured JRPG characters I've seen in quite a while. Yes. And corollary, the fact that you can never truly know a person does not excuse you from making an effort to get to know them. Another very Grace's sentiment.
Haste.
I have something important to tell you, Lambda.
Have you come to threaten me? If you destroy me, this man will be destroyed in turn.
No. In fact, it's the opposite.
What do you mean?
I'm not going to fight you anymore. I've decided to trust you. I know that Asbel can be reckless sometimes. So take good care of him, okay?
Letting the object of her former purpose know, I've put down my purpose.
Looks like we're all here.
I might have been designed to kill you, but that's not me anymore. Yeah, that's a great observation, Grail, before we move on to the rest of the scene. And I think it adds, for me, this weird kind of uncanny valley quality to this city, because on the one hand, it's populated by all these automata, and so you might think, well, you know, they're not really people, they don't really need human society, so maybe that's why the city feels more like this weird empty repository than an actual city. But then, as you also say, it's like intricately enough designed that it feels like it is trying to resemble and give a semblance of human culture, which to me, like, that doesn't strike me as an error in the way the game was sculpted. Rather, I think it points to the weird liminal space that these automata occupy, where they're not really treated as people, and yet they're still given enough sense of humanity to be able to, like, approximate people and adequately serve their tasks. Kind of that gross kind of manipulative middle ground that made it possible for Emerald to sculpt Protos Haste in the way that she wanted, or manipulate and abuse Lambda, right? Where you give someone enough of a sense of self to take it away from them or starve them of it, basically. Yeah, a dark and sad city, the more you think about it, I think.
This ends today. We must shut down the core, no matter what.
I know, we very quickly ramped up from first Vesperia reference to stream where Pottery won't shut up about Vesperia. You know we all love those streams. Missable side quest in Pascal's room, of all things. God bless you, Grail. Thank you for being our spirit guide through this whole adventure. We will definitely do that before we head to the Listelia shaft.
I totally want to upgrade Mecha Asbel's armaments, but nothing's working.
Oh, maybe this is pointing us there.
Yeah, okay, but do you even know what you're looking at?
Pascal, do you know what you're looking at?
There's a mouse caught in here. Sophie, take it outside. Okay. That scared me. Little fella must have been attracted to these biscuit crumbs. Will you please stop eating while you're fiddling with your machines? Okay. Anyway, now that it's all cleaned up, I think it should work.
The Rorschach of Vesperia fans. That tracks.
There we go. Now let's see. Nope, still missing some parts. Are they at your house? Probably. It's a big ol' hassle, but I suppose we could hoof it back there. What now? Just wondering if mice chomp on parts like these.
That's not funny, Pascal.
Guess I won't know until I get back home to check. Let's go.
Don't tell me Pascal's house is full of...
I just can't wait. Well, at least we're on the path to giving you an open door for Exilia 2, at least, Grail. And if you ever help me out with the emulation stuff, Innocence, I'm sure will not be far behind. I think I said I found and got a copy of the Japanese version in Japan. Not that that helps me much as someone who can't speak Japanese, but it's nice to have a copy in my home at least. Wait, are you saying that besides the masterclass stuff, there are side quests that we missed by going to Fodra first? I thought we were being pretty diligent about knocking off all the side quests. All right, so we are going back to... Oh, that's hilarious. So we rested, but we didn't actually rest as we would in an inn because Asbel still doesn't have all his HP. Although I suppose they did just stay up all night, so it kind of is fitting, funny enough, that they wouldn't get rest. Well, let's go back and take care of that on the way to Pascal's house. The Hopebringer, and we got that, right? I think? Yeah, we did. Oh, good, so we're good. You had me worried for a second. Well, and I'm telling you, Pottery, between you and me, it will be really, really fun to work through that duology, because, as you both know, I never got over the hump with the first one. So it'll be really fun to go into it with new eyes, and also people who see it differently than I do. Yeah, I'm getting more excited for that duology the more we're talking and thinking about it. That's adequate. Ooh, we can make an abyssal figure. Malik, my boy. Excellent. But a rhyming joke, which I think automatically makes it true. I think that's how that works. I also think it's totally fair to put a lot of stock in that, Grail, because I have many a game, and I hope everyone watching does, where, you know, my thoughts about the game itself aside, it'll always be a special game to me just based on the context in which I played it with other people. I think that's certainly a real thing and so much of the magic of so many games. As we talked about way back in the day, I've never really gotten deep into Halo, but many, many fond memories of co-oping more than one of those with various buddies of mine across the years. So that series will always have a special magic to me, only for that reason. Okay, and we charge the mixer. I think we're good to go. All right. I remember having a lot of fun with the co-op on Reach, yep. For me it was the, like the LAN demo for, I think, the first Halo, which was just the Blood Gulch map. Like, I played the crap out of that with my middle school friends, and then I think we did Reach for a little bit going into high school, and then the big one was 4 multiplayer online with local split screen with my college roommate. If I haven't talked about that before, we would just look at each other whenever we could intuit that we needed a study break and just say, let's fire up the 360, and we were off to the races. Nothing like it. I wish that kind of gaming friendship on all of you. Well, I know, and that's what I was alluding to, Padre, because I vividly remember that conversation. It got me interested in looking further into the series, which I obviously still haven't had the bandwidth to do, but that nugget has certainly stuck in my head. It's interesting. I don't know whether I asked you this last time, but I wonder whether it's my prejudice or a misconception of the series that it's not known for its storytelling, if it does in fact have narrative substance like you're talking about. Because I feel like, at least in my circles, it's not one that people oftentimes talk about in terms of having a lot of storytelling value to it, but I don't know whether that's a deficiency of me or if maybe it says something about how the games were marketed or how most people play it, but I'm interested in it. Yeah, you got it. You just have to watch the show. That's the secret. No video game is capable of telling a good story, but once they're adapted into TV shows, then you can get a story out of it. He said, voice dripping with sarcasm. That's what I keep saying, Pottery, and then my Star Trek friends will grimace and tell me that they all have it because I guess they've lured a lot of people in with new Star Trek content. But I am not a Trekkie, so thankfully I have remained immune to the further subscription. Ah, the star, my beloved, I missed you.
Hey, so do you think it looks like Asbel?
It's a spitting image. Wait, you mean that's not Asbel?
No. Ah, boo. I thought I was getting close.
Pascal, do you know what Asbel looks like?
Oh, bananas. Where did I leave that thing? Not here. Not here either. Oh, Pascal, who lived in the past, give me a sign or whatever and stop.
I feel seen. I'm not the only one who's like this.
Time to get this thing and see what comes out. Bang, bang, bang. Ka-chonk, smack, pow. Digging all around for that thing I can't remember.
This was totally worth going back for.
Oh, hey, Fourier. Stop singing. You're making my ears bleed.
Yeah, everyone knows how that's how you get the most value out of any franchise grail, obviously.
And what the heck are you doing back here anyway? I thought you were on Fodra. I wanted to make this look like him. But I guess it doesn't look like him at all, so now Sophie's all totally disappointed.
Who's it supposed to be?
Asbel!
Oh, I see.
It's a secret weapon. Isn't it cool?
If it's a weapon, does it really have to look like someone?
Of course it does, silly.
Duh.
That'll make Asbel happy, and Sophie happy, and maybe even little bro happy.
The grumpy kid with glasses? Why would he care?
'Cause he loves his big brother. Duh! When he sees Mecha Asbel here, he's gonna cry big sloppy tears.
You seem quite familiar with little bro.
Yeah, well, we've been traveling around the world.
You've been traveling with Asbel too, and yet this looks nothing like him.
Oh, come on, it's perfect. Wait, what does Asbel look like again?
Oh, is the joke that she's also just been paying attention to Hubert over the whole journey, so she only has like a good visual concept of him?
Never mind.
That's pretty funny.
Look, there it is.
What are you planning to do with that?
I'm just imagining, like, we get a first-person point of view from Pascal, and, like, it's the character model of Hubert surrounded by a bunch of, like, chibi robots that look nothing like any of the other characters.
Come on, Fourier, lend me a hand.
You're hopeless. Do it yourself.
Aw, my sister's mean. Fine, I don't need you. I'm gonna make this look just like Asbel, and then little bro's gonna be moved to tears. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, but I mean, also, if you want something to, like, represent him with enough fidelity for Lambda to think, oh, this is literally Asbel, like, it vaguely resembles him. Probably not that close, though. Especially if we're talking about a master engineer here.
Oh, I love hitting things with my big head.
Although maybe her real calling was as a songwriter.
Will you please just be quiet?
She's having fun.
Oh, that's...
And
it's directionally better.
it's perfect.
You just colored it.
Fucking move now and stuff, too.
It's Asbel. It's Asbel. Yay.
Well, if it
Yay.
makes Sophie happy. I swear, Pascal, will you ever grow up?
Huh?
Pascal. I gotta look at this. That's right, Sophie knows what she's about. Protect people? Check. That's all it needs to be, Asbel. An unpainted statue is like a rainbow without color. So says Pascal, artiste extraordinaire. Love it. Alright, might as well equip that to her now. Yeah, so I think Pottery, just wrapping up the Halo thing, hearing you say that, it does then sound like it's probably my bias. And interesting, because I harp on this bias all the time with the games that I am familiar with stuff like JRPGs, but I think we can all be a little blind to it in media or genres with which we're not as intimately and directly familiar. I feel like I unfairly probably stereotype some games like that and Call of Duty according to a certain player type who will just kind of use them for relatively mindless combat, just like going on multiplayer, shooting up without thinking about a lot of the narrative or anything like the campaign or stuff to do with that. But obviously there are many different player types who can get many different things out of games, like we talk about and extol the virtue of all the time. Just harder to see that from the outside if you're not actively engaged with those works, whether it be a video game or something else, I think. Have we talked about The Last of Us on here before? I can't remember whether we have, because I'm so torn about that whole film experiment, Grail, for reasons not unrelated to what it is that you're talking about, because part of me thinks it's interesting to see Druckmann try to reimagine his story in a filmic language as opposed to a video game language, and I can tell he's putting a lot of thought into it. I can tell because he talks to no end about it, but it's nice to hear that. And I do think that for people who don't play video games, it can be like an interesting point of entry to get exposure to that story and talk about it with people who have played the game and maybe even learn more about video games that way. So I think there's a lot of pragmatic utility to the series in that sense. But then, like, it was easy enough for me to get on board with that with the first one. Then thinking about how they're rolling right into the second game, it's so much harder for me to stomach, because I feel like that game, which I don't think I've published on With a Terrible Fate about, but I wrote about it actually in my writing sample for graduate programs. I think that game is such a deep and thoughtful example to me of really hard-hitting aesthetic effects and experiences that you can only have when you're in the driver's seat of a video game, experiencing things in the torturous way that The Last of Us 2 puts you through them. And so I'll be interested to watch it, and I will, just to see what they try to do with it, but I can't imagine that being adequately represented as an artwork in a non-interactive medium. So and when I think about that, it pains me to think of people who might sit down and watch that not having played the game and think that that is the representation of the artwork as opposed to everything that the game puts you through. So, like I said, very torn on that. All right, final dungeon, and behold hell itself. That's what I like to hear. All right, we'll head off then. Oh yeah, and I was mostly like, I can deal with Druckmann's commentary at the end of the episodes, like the look inside the episodes that HBO does. That's what I was talking about. I know enough to not go excavating further than that. Well, as we've talked to death, I think with the works one likes and doesn't like, charity can be really important and rewarding in terms of what we get out of them and then what we take to other works. But yeah, look, man, I think maybe one of the most interesting things to consider about The Last of Us, especially as it's metamorphosed beyond the games, is simply the question of why is it such a controversial entity? Because I think you could throw a rock and hit basically any gamer or now any television consumer and find someone with pretty complicated and messy views about the series, which is saying something. I think it's a kind of achievement to make something that's so thoroughly controversial, like we were talking about with Final Fantasy VII Remake the other day. All right, the Lestalia Shaft, a shaft which extends to Fodra's core. It's fallen into disrepair from erosion. Well, that certainly bodes well.
So this is Fodra's Guardia Shaft.
It must have been quite a sight back in the day.
It's been totally corroded by all the Eleth.
It's possible that the path to the core has fallen into similar disrepair.
This is the same track that we got in the Guardia Shaft, right? I think, if memory serves.
Reaching our goal may be even more difficult than we first imagined.
Not to mention the constant threat of attack from swarms of little queens.
I just can't wait.
We still have to go. I know how those girls feel. They fight because they want to protect something that's very important to them. But if we can just talk to them, they might realize we aren't their enemy. Even though there were so many of them, their faces all looked lonely. I want to know why. So we have to go.
Sophie's right.
Now let's go.
So that'll be interesting to see whether Sophie can reach an understanding or actually negotiate with the Little Queens. Because I'll put fresh in everyone's mind, if you haven't played Tales of Arise lately, since that's the other model that I have on hand for a sentient planet expressing its will, the original and actual Renans, the Helganquil, basically have their entire will and mind subsumed by this singular consciousness of the planet, so they don't really have any vantage point from which to see outside of what the planet is expressing to them in terms of what they have to do. And it's only after you literally exit the like the circumference of the planet's influence, like Hevericht 37 does, that they're able to snap back to a sense of individuality and express themselves differently than the planet as a whole. So if Sophie is able to achieve something like a one-on-one conversation with the Little Queens and actually help them and heal them, that'll be an interesting and very different note from the other model that we have.
Fodra's core should be just up ahead.
So Fodra's core is just this world's version of Athenia's Lestalia?
Yep, you could call it the original Lestalia.
I see.
That was where I fought all of you. I cannot apologize enough for my actions.
That's over now. You can stop apologizing for it.
Yes, I concur. However, there is one thing I would like you to clarify that's been bothering me for quite some time.
Yes?
Your appearance back then, did Lambda choose that style?
Yes. Is there a problem with it? To be honest, I thought it looked rather fetching.
I absolutely cannot believe His Majesty has such abysmal taste.
Sorry, but who cares?
I care. Even now when I look at you, I can't help but recall
Oh, that's
back to
funny,
that
Grail. Yeah, the game
scandalous
totally
getup.
got you there.
You love obsessing over little things, don't you?
Huh?
Sorry, but who cares? Yeah, there are some great throwaway lines like that in the series. I was smiling at one from Symphonia I had forgotten today, where it's when Lloyd finally gets through the door to the inner sanctum where the Great Seed and Martell are, when Mythos is trying to revive her, and Mythos says something like, "How did you get through the door? Only a high-ranking member of Crucius can do that." And Lloyd's just like, "I don't have to explain myself to you." Just like the most Lloyd thing to say in response to Mythos. Yeah, and Sea Pottery, I think like that's half of why I gravitate towards Death of the Author interpretations, the less substantive and more pragmatic half, because like half the times what an author sees in his or her own story is just so radically different and foreign to what I see in it, and can sometimes, I don't want to say ruin it, but can change my opinion of it in ways that are outside the text and not always in positive ways, let's say. So suffice to say, I'm not even sure which event you're talking about. I'm perfectly happy with that. And I think, I'm sure part of my appreciation of the story is that I don't know that background with Druckmann, because it speaks to me in ways that are totally unrelated to anything to do with that. Yep, that's another great choice, Grail. I mean, you know you're preaching to the choir with a Xenoblade choice, but I got a lot of love for that one too. All right, base 1. The journey begins. We thought we were done with exploring incredibly convoluted, mind-bending shafts. But the joke's on you. We had only just begun.
We will survive! Here!
Oh yeah, I think this is going to be hard. Oh, is this Sigma? Wow, so its name is Sigma. And look at that. The model is like a little version of Lambda as it first manifested in the catacombs. Ooh, that's interesting. Yeah, so I'm guessing we'll have at least a Monday stream in us if I know final post-game Tales dungeons as well as I think I do. Oh, does Sophie have her Excel finality yet? I don't remember. Oh, drag, she doesn't. Oh, she's working toward it.
Everyone did as well as could be expected.
Thanks, Dad, with your exacting standards. We're trying our best. God, yeah, I can already tell how huge this is. Look at the vastness of it. You know what it reminds me a little of? Just with being able to see the different layers and all of the colors, it reminds me of some of the Aeropoli. I'm not sure the plural of Aeropolis, but in Tales of Destiny, when you go up to the Ether Sphere. Some of them where you have to like teleport between different gridded levels look quite reminiscent of this, which is fun. What did I say that was a that's what she said? I didn't even hear myself. Oh, are we talking about shafts? Is that, are we back on the shaft jokes? Zoggy suddenly parachutes down from the rafters wanting to fight me. Where is Yuri Lowell? I can't find him anywhere. He's my best friend. I don't have a lot of friends. I don't think so. But I think we have the appropriate title. No? Oh, it's because I was waiting for the exceed to pop before I went down to this. Yeah, I was going to switch over after we got exceed. Oh, how did Sherry get in the party? I don't think I actually checked the party setup before we went in here, which was a rookie move. Well, I'll get the party configured after this. Core Drake, not the most inspired name I've ever seen in a Tales game, but descriptive. Lore.
Is everyone okay? Thank goodness.
Oh, alright, looking for some diversity. Okay, we can keep it as is. Grail will tell you offhandedly, speaking of party diversity, and since we clearly have some time here, I am continuing to very slowly and with much enjoyment and relish work my way through Tales of Cards R. So, with no spoilers to the uninitiated, we've gotten to know the Imperial Army a little bit better, and we've just arrived at a certain base. And it seems like we're starting to learn a little bit more about the world, which I don't have to tell anyone on this stream is exactly my speed. So, continuing to just be super interested and engaged with that. Oh no, all of the shaft jokes have reemerged. That's true. Well, it's never too late to stop giving them the shaft, especially when we're in the shaft. Oh God, help me. I'm imprisoned now. I can never escape. Really, Pottery? So, do you remember the original well enough to know whether that's just a consequence of your being older and having played more games, or if it's like they added more quality of life stuff, or maybe a little bit of both? So I never played the original, but it's definitely on my list. I've heard awesome things about it. And it's the kind of game that, like, I don't know if you have games that you're sad you missed as a kid, because you feel like you would have really appreciated them at that time in your life, but it's one of those games, at least conceptually speaking, for me. Yeah, so just being older, I get that. I think about that a lot with Tales of Symphonia, because like I've said on the stream before, I got stuck, I think for the first time in any game, with Tales of Symphonia in the Toys Valley Mine at the point where they require you to equip the faster movement EX gem. which I just like did not have in my head at all, that some puzzles would require you to equip a certain EX gem to get beyond. And now I'm sure like if I encountered something similar in games, it would just be second nature to figure out how to get beyond it.
No one can stand before my
Now
blade.
we grow up and we figure out how to solve puzzles, right? If things go well. Destiny breakers! Ah, now you're speaking my language. Gauntlets forged 1,000 years ago which allow their users to shatter hopeless destinies. I would have opted for something more like shattering the ceilings that wall us in, but I'll take it. Are they better than what she has now? They give her better CC. I'll take it for the variety. Oh, and look, the gauntlets are modeled after Swordians. I love that. Certainly Dimlos, and is that Atwide on the other side? I can't tell. My Swordian recognition is a little off the game. They kind of wall you in when they're all around the world encompassing you, depending on your reference frame. Did you know what I meant, Pottery? Did you know what I meant? Come on, man. I've been breaking my brain with Fantasia theory all week for you. Let me have a slip of the tongue. Yeah, Grail, I will say, so this last playthrough of mine, or play session, I should say, was my first time having her in the party, and it was so cool after the role she's played in the story to see how variable her gameplay style is, like how many different roles in the party she can satisfy, because that seemed so perfectly consonant with everything we've gotten to know about who she is and why she's significant up to this point in the story. Just beautiful ludonarrative consonance, as we would say here on the stream.
Bang, screw, chugga, and nope.
What are you doing now, Pascal? Get off of there and let's get going.
Well, I suppose the Graces stream is also a study in comedy, so I'll give you that one, Pottery.
It worked enough to get us down here.
Yeah, but the parts are worn out. It won't be able to take anything too heavy back up.
Too heavy? Do you mean me?
What's wrong, Sharia?
It's because of that sweet potato I ate after dinner last night. I heard sweets don't count if they come from plants, but... I'm such a fool.
Sharia?
Forgive me. This is all my fault.
Okay. What the hell was that?
Consider a lesson in how a woman's mind works.
So you actually understood it?
Not one bit.
Anyway, I'm sure there's something around here that'll help us get back up.
Yeah, that would be fun. Just only use the beautiful artistic maximum point executions. So let's see. Excel. There it is, yeah. So I feel like use it when they get to 100% is a nice way to get the most out of it, right? That would be my assumption, and Grail, if you have a better idea, I'm sure you will share it. Oh yeah, I mean, this isn't in the strategy menu, Pottery, but Grail, as you mentioned it, isn't that part of why they have the, like the only deal 1 point of damage skill for everyone? So that if you want, you can do a team that is basically only able to execute kills in Vesperia with fatal strikes and stuff like that. I never really used that, but I thought it was cool that they included it for that reason. Yeah, for sure. So you got a little bit of less fine grain with it. That makes sense. Yeah, I hear you. That makes sense. Well, the not going back up is a little concerning, but honestly, I'm just happy to be making what seems like forward progress at this point, so I'll take that.
I'll give you everything I've got. And this, and some of these. It's over. You and me, Lambda. Here's the sky. Radiant light, strike forward. Divine conqueror.
I think that's all of them.
Yeah, that reminds me of a tedious strategy in the sense of like really old school Tales tedious strategies. Like there was this one Coliseum fight, which I won't name, but Grail, you'll probably know what I'm talking about, at the very end of Eternia, where like the predominant strategy for getting through it is like on an attack by attack basis based on what your opponent throws at you, pausing the screen and switching your character's equipment loadout to be able to optimally deal with that attack, because that's how challenging the fight is and how narrow the margins are. So it's like, you can do that, but in your words, Pottery seems a little tedious. Sometimes, especially in those retro games, I feel like that can be part of the fun of at least doing it once, but I'll confess, I read that that was the strategy and I said, you know, I'll watch the fight once to say that I watched it. I don't feel like I need to get through that on my own. But I definitely have another Eternia playthrough in me at some point, so that may well change. Ooh! This Sharia's? It's very cool. It smacks of Kronos in the Tales of Arise EX dungeon, or Mythos at the end of Symphonia. I think you can freeze time also.
Death by moonlight. Let destruction reign. Eat this.
We did it, Sophie. We did it, Sharia.
Too cute. I love it. When Sharia enters Excel mode, all enemy actions stop for as long as Temporal Rift is active. This is an extremely useful technique when deployed correctly and can be used to build combos quickly and save yourself from tight situations. It does, to me, invite the question of why Sharia is able to manipulate time. It wasn't Lambda we had to worry about. It was Sharia this whole time. Alright, well, I will, yeah, maybe I'll play around with the strategy a bit and try to leech off of some of your knowledge, Grail. So 50%. Up to you. Let's try that. Stop, Foder's core. I love a decisive piece of guidance. Okay, so we can't go down that way. But I think where we came down in the first place, the path forked. Yeah, that's right. Aha! A warp point. Will it warp us up or down? Oh, we're back at base 1. Okay. My goodness. So this, I think, is the way we went before. So I think I just want to try a different direction altogether. Do you mean like why was it designed in this way to be multi-tiered Grail, or do you mean like what is the mechanism according to which they have things floating? This was where we came down, I think. That's right? Yeah, I will let you know about the map, Grail, thank you. Yeah, this is where we went down in the first place. Alright, so I don't think we went up or north, whatever you want to call it, yet. Let's try going this way. Yeah, so my guess on that score, Grail, I think we already kind of heard an answer, even though it wasn't described this way. Because they talked about how the shaft has eroded from just time and disuse, right? So I think it's so large and vast that you would probably want a lot of levels just to be able to perform maintenance on it.
Teamwork is the key.
That would be my assumption, at least. And, hey, Sherry learned indignation. I'm here for that. And I would imagine, you know, back in the day, there was probably like an easier warp point, maybe of the kind that will unlock later in the dungeon, that would take you directly there if you needed to just get directly there. But in terms of why there are so many levels and why it's stratified in this way, that would be my guess. Alright, what else do you have for us, Sherry? I thought you said you just learned indignation. Looks like you haven't learned it yet. What the heck? Well, anyway, I want you learning your Excel finality, so that's that. Nothing there. That might be something. Or maybe it's deactivated. Oh, what is that name? Egregoroi. Egregoroi? Sounds mythical, perhaps.
No escape!
Egregoroi, I think.
Is everyone okay? Thank goodness.
I'm not sure if that's spelled right. I'll target him again when we see another one. I have no doubt that we will. So this is inactive, right? Yeah, alright. At least now we have a good sense for what that looks like. Nothing. Nothing. Okay, I'm gonna hope this is a different elevator than the one we hit before. I think it is. Yeah, it is. Oh man, testing my spatial reasoning game. Egregoroi. Hey, I got it in one. Okay. Yeah, let me try one. Doesn't seem that way.
Prepare yourself! You have angered me. You'll regret this.
I didn't even know there were double extensions. That's cool. Do you know what title it's on? We can look if we can start working towards it.
Okay, death by moonlight. Eat this! Be gone!
Sometimes I can't help but regret the past.
It truly is the battle system that keeps on giving, isn't it? Okay. So this is another straightforward descent. Probably prudent to look at the whole floor before we drop down, though. Oh yeah, it looks like there are two different ways to drop down, just to be maximally disorienting.
Be careful, everyone.
It's toying with you, Grail. It's the true final boss. Gotta figure out how to overcome it. Oh, that must be like it's saying great job to Lambda at the end of Excel mode. That's really cool. I only just noticed that.
Victory is ours.
I could always use it. We can rotate new ones in. Don't know if we have the extension though. I don't know which of these elevators to take. Well, I made the point of going all the way over here, so let's just do this one. Oh, how it pains me that they're all one way. This seems significant though. Maybe? Okay. Progress? This feels like progress. Remember Vinheim when you could just walk past the big bad loreless dragon and take on Mythos right away? Oh, the glory days, my friends. It's called Gamer's Intuition, actually. It's a little known super secret skill that unlocks at level 29. Oh, and they even have their elements, the Swordians. That's really cool. I love that as an homage to Destiny. So the water one, is that Atwhite or Sheltier? Oh, I'm gonna have to look it up after this. It's gonna bug me. You might know, Grail. Which Swordian is the water element? Why am I losing my mind? Atwhite. Alright. I got it right the first time. There you go. Getting directions in the dungeons right the first time. Getting the Swordians right the first time. I'm on a roll.
Stay safe, everyone!
Not looking good. I failed everyone.
Wait, I'm racking my brain. Which final dungeon are you talking about?
Strands of sickle give name to the effulgence that brings fortune to all.
Not the Gununga lab. What are we talking about?
To launch triplets of terror.
I didn't have Excel there, though. But I do appreciate the reminder. Oh, you mean calling back to whichever one anyone in particular just liked? Yes, I get you. You had me going, though. I was trying to rifle through my Rolodex of final dungeons. That's the way we went before, right? So... didn't go down this way yet. Well, that's part of why I asked. I was kind of surprised that it did repeat it, because we've gotten enough new tracks in this that, especially for the final dungeon, I imagined, alright, they'll come up with something new that's just made especially for this. But I guess not. Yeah, it was a nice track at the time back in Act 3, but now I do feel like we perhaps heard it beyond the point of reasonableness. It does, but still, like we were talking about last time, different shafts, different context. The gang's going here for something totally different. Just because it's a similar area doesn't mean it's a similar journey, you know?
Everyone's fine. That's what matters.
Oy, don't remind me. Yeah, this is a bit of a nightmare to get around, isn't it?
I can't lose.
I see now immediately why you've been foreshadowing it for the whole stream. It's not my favorite. Good job, Asbel.
Sorry about that. Here, draw, demon bang, here. Not looking good. I failed everyone. Sorry about that. Okay, bang! Infernal torrent! Strike! Roar! Die! Now! Strike! Go! Death by moonlight! Demon bang! Moon down! Evil be quelled!
Oh, bummer. Do we have the right party for it at least? I can switch up the party if we don't have the right configuration.
Is everyone okay? Thank goodness.
Bummer. Well, the good news is this dungeon doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon, so I've got a feeling we'll be able to put in the paces and find it. Okay, please God, help me put this dungeon together in my head. So I think it's got to want you to be able to look down and roughly intuit where you're going. Oh, did she finally? Good catch. Okay. That big nexus down to the north of there seems important. Yeah, you're not kidding. I imagine just by process of elimination we'll probably open most of those with no effort. And up. Oh my god. Exhausting. Yes, at this point, Grail, I can certainly see the soundness of what you were saying, where if you know where to go, I'm sure you can get this done very, very efficiently. But there doesn't seem to be much rhyme or reason to figuring that out if you don't know. I feel like we haven't gone to the left yet. That's just an inactive warp pad. If we've gone to the right. Oh, that's a way down. I don't think we've done this yet. Base 4. Ooh, and a chest. Yay! New areas. Is it progress? Who knows, but at least it's new.
Silver, shining blade of triumph. Prepare yourself. Dance like the damned. Instant balls. Okay, death by moonlight. Demon bang. Beast blaster. Demon bang. Gotcha. Slash.
That was really cool. All of these Excel finalities are so cool. Now we're still finding new stuff.
We need to focus a little more on our teamwork. Teamwork?
Cooperating with your companions. I agree. I'll begin preparing daily teamwork training schedules for everyone immediately.
Wow, how regimented.
Was that the one you were thinking of, Grail? Because that's one that was in my deep memory, so I don't know if we saw that earlier this playthrough or if I'm even thinking back to my first playthrough of Graces. Oh, a different one, okay. Well, we're getting some ones we haven't gotten in a while at least, so that's something. Did Malik get his finality yet? Oh, he did! Well, we should put him back in the party so that we can see the promised hilarity. Okay. Well, my optimism was short-sighted, but we got a chest. That's something. And that's just a shut-off warp point. That's nothing. It's a bug. One of them's got to be the right one. Logically, right?
We won't fail.
Good. Good. Oh, new chest. Cool. Rebirth Crusader. All right. A sword of resurrection that can reverse death in a single strike. It awakens passion and serenity and desires for localization. Looks like it was for Asbel. Maybe? No? Who was that for? Oh, for Richard, of course. Yeah, a healing weapon. Makes me more interested to know more about Rebirth, definitely, Pottery. I don't love that it's better than the Symphonian Scepter. I would bet on A or B, Grail, if it's not dirty pool for me to bet on myself. I don't have confidence right now. 835 is the magic number right now. And I think 72 is the level? 72, 73? Yeah.
Remember your training.
So realistically, I hope it's reaching the final boss. I think it would be hard to go through 28 levels here. 2,500 in one day? Bro. Was that literally all you did that day, though? It must have been. That's an obscene number of encounters.
This is what happens when you misjudge your foe.
Oh, so you didn't do 2,500 in a day. You did like 600 in a day. That's still nuts, but it's believable. Okay, I wanted to check. I know this is back up to where we came in, but it looked like there was maybe another path out from the ship. So I wanted to just check that. And I suppose at this point it wouldn't hurt to refill the mixer also. No, there's not. I'm just crazy, but it still makes sense to restock, I think. Oh, there are warp points. That might be what I was thinking of, but perhaps those will activate later. Oh, I understand, Grail. I've certainly been there with arts in other Tales games, or titles, or achievements. It's a real feel. And my god, you can get it, but at what cost? Alright, let's go. Well, at least it'll be easy to save at the end of the stream tonight, since every path spits you back out at the beginning, whether you want it to or not. I guess there is an interesting idea too. I'm thinking more about what you raised regarding the construction of the shaft, Grail, and I'm thinking about the experience of trying to work our way down. And it feels almost like it calls to mind the idea of the immune system that was used to describe Little Queen, almost as if the very structure were trying to spit you out and keep you away from the core. So I wonder whether there was somehow a way in which the planet's sentience had a hand in the construction to make it that convoluted and hard to actually reach the core, or if perhaps just the scientists, recognizing that it was very dangerous to engage with the core directly, tried to do it as a way of keeping other people out and keeping them safe. Okay, I think this is a new one, but for the life of me, I can't really tell anymore.
Let's do this! Now! There! Charge! Be on!
Well, that's part of what I'm thinking too, Grail, in terms of asking, is there something more going on? What does the planet really want? Because that too is a color similarity with Tales of Fantasia, where part of Daus's whole scheme is that he wants to stop Magi technology because it competes with the resource of mana that he needs for his own purposes. And so there are many places on Earth that he doesn't bother destroying or influencing at all. And so the party points out something very similar to what you just said about the Little Queen, saying Daus could have wasted the entire world. He chose not to. Maybe there's something else going on with him that we don't quite understand.
Well, let me think.
And I think it's pretty reasonable to raise that same argument about Little Queen. So I hope we get more color explaining that. Whether we will is another question. Deathly Abyss. A magical blade that leads its foes into an abyss of terror. You'll want to scream as you swing it. That almost looks like a fell arm, or a devil's arm. Is that what it is, or is it just the style? Deathly Abyss. No, it looks like it's just the style, I guess. Cool weapon, though. Alright, so this is the only other way off this floor, which is a new floor because it had that new weapon, so... Good juju. Feeling some good juju. Ooh, a big descent. Base 5. Okay. Show me the money. Really hoping they call the core something cute like the little beehive also, since they have the Little Queen as the main antagonist. Be a lost opportunity otherwise.
We won't fail.
Alright, Asbel learned Exceed, so now we can put him on the title that was going to give him that new burst art, the name of which escapes me. It was here, I think? Diabolic Rage. Yes. Very good. Very good. What's Invigoration? Will it tell us? No, it won't tell us. I think so, both by process of elimination and also what this area looks and feels like. I have a cautious sense, knock on wood, that we are heading in a good direction here. Reed, my beloved. Bro, I was missing you in Tales of Eternia and all the Carta. There are people I love that live in this world. Ugh, my paragon. Reed. Redeem my world, please. I'm begging you. We all need a little more Reed in our lives. A few good Reeds and a few good omelets would cure most of the world's problems. Awesome. It's funny because, like we were talking about in the beginning of this stream, Symphonia was my introduction to the series, and Indignation, like we've discussed before, shows up in so many ways in so many of the games, virtually all of them, I think, without looking at them one by one and doing a full cataloging. But the more I see and appreciate Indignation in other games, the more I feel like maybe its weakest representation is in Tales of Symphonia. Because Genus gets it. To my recollection, there's not even any special mechanic according to which he gets it, and it's just like a sphere of light that explodes, as opposed to it looking a million times as epic in virtually any other game, and usually having more meaningful acquisition requirements too. Alright, so we're at one of those warp points that makes my toes curl, but that's the only way to go, so we're gonna have to do it. But we're not going to talk about that, Grail, because I don't need any more reasons to be bumming on Legendia before I try it again. I want to like it, remember, that's my mission. So we're back here. Are we at least, like, in a different part of the first floor that's going to be useful to us? My guess is no. For the love of God. That's true, they do have indignant judgment. Good thing to remember. Well, if you can find a way to articulate it, I'm all ears. But in the meanwhile, I know something else we can do. Oh no!
Not at all.
The battle ended before I could activate it.
He doesn't agree.
Malik. Alright then, you keep your secrets. Bro, I was so excited too. Alright, well we're back to 0. I don't feel great about that. Okay, I can see the path that we just went down. I told you my story about that. Speaking of old Halo LAN parties, it was like an unspoken inside joke in my friend group in like middle school going into high school that we would bring people into our Halo LAN party who had never played Halo before, and then we would haze them by getting them to get in a Banshee and they'd be flying around, and we'd say, hey, if you press this button you can get a super power boost and you'll be able to, you know, track down your enemies and get away from gunfire and all these great things. And of course what we were pointing out was the eject button, so we would get them to just drop their character out of this flying machine like at the top of the map and just promptly kill themselves. We were really nice back then.
Remember your training.
It's a bummer that it used his whole Excel gauge even though it was only active for a moment.
Sorry about that.
We shall never forswear.
Death by moonlight. I failed everyone. Sorry about that.
Asbel, why?
It's over. Rip to pieces. Stampede strike. Gotcha. Death by moonlight. Demon bang.
I hope I was of some use.
Alright, that's clear enough, Grail, and very useful because, as I'm sure you could see, I was already going totally in the wrong direction based on that, so... Alright, let's try that in the interest of... Not even in the interest of time, just in the interest of Aaron's sanity. If I can get back to the start now. That's not the way back to the start. We can just wrap around. Anyone have fun weekend plans, gaming related or otherwise, while Aaron tries to work his way through the monstrosity that is this dungeon? Alright, so south from the start, then all the way to the right, then all the way up. This I can do. South. All the way to the right.
Okay, let's do this.
Okay, death by moonlight. Infernal torrent.
Run away. Remedy.
Strike. Not yet.
Oh, awesome, Pottery. Yeah, it's been a minute since you've moved at this point, hasn't it? I'm glad you're doing something to mark the occasion. Must also hopefully mean that you're nice and settled in and moved in at this point, which I know can be a struggle when you relocate, so cheers to that.
Let's keep moving.
Ah, yes, the old, the two-phase move of first move yourself and then get furniture to sit on. I know that well, my friend. Okay, and then up is what you said, right? Okay. Writing absolutely counts as a game, Grail. And likewise, I will expect you to give us an update on your gaming journeys through your writing on Monday. That's awesome. And I don't know if it helps you. It helps me to know this, so take this for what you will. But I will also be in my writing vortex working through the end of this Fantasia article, so it'll almost be like we're in a little writing lab together working on our projects, even though we'll be worlds away physically. So hopefully we can vibe off that energy.
this! Stampede strike! Yeah, there! Okay, there! Let's go! Here! Dive! Death by moonlight!
Your sword skills are amazing.
Thanks. I'll use them to protect us all.
Okay, we were going up from here. Yeah, I've kind of lost my way on this map of yours, Grail. I'm sorry to say. Like, I'm inclined to use this teleporter, but it was in the down direction, so I don't know if this is the one that you mean. I'll give it a shot, and then we can regroup if this ends up just booting me back to the top. I'll also say, when Dan and I are podcasting this weekend, I'm sure we will be revisiting and rehashing some of our Japan adventures, so if there are any particular kinds of stories that you want to hear about, or things you're interested in, feel free to let me know, and I can bring that up when we're chatting. Oh, this is annoying. I can see something down there that feels like the important thing we need to get to over there on that bottommost floor. But damned if I know how to get there. Oh, you know that I'm the last guy to whom you need to justify having trouble looking at color, Grail. Colorblind sap that I am. So you're certainly not going to get any flack from me. Aside from the obligatory trolling, which, you know, it wouldn't be the same without it. Okay, well this one is in fact just going to kick us back to the top. Alright. So where is it that you think the map wants us to go from square one, since we're going to be going back there? I'm going to say we can give it one more try with the map, and then we can save and plan to regroup on Monday based on the time. So going directly right was, that just takes us immediately to an elevator down, so we can do that, for sure. Oh, going immediately left? Did you mean left instead of right? Because those are two very different things. Okay, here we are at the start. So, going directly left? Is that what you're talking about? So this way? This is a teleporter we don't have access to. So I'm going to say that's probably not what that means. Directly right takes us to this elevator down, which I think we did before, but we might have gone the wrong way after that. Let's try it. It won't cost us much time. Yeah, I remember this one I was optimistic because it took us very far down, and then I kind of lost my optimism because I think it just spits us out, unfortunately. There's that chest. Yeah, and that just kicks us back here. I really felt like I was going somewhere when I got to that floor that opened the stairs on either side, but then it didn't seem like it did anything after that. Like it just kicked me back to the beginning anyways, which was very demoralizing. Cheers, Pottery. Hey, enjoy your housewarming. Well earned, I'm sure. Have a great weekend. Always a pleasure having you hang out with us, my man. We'll be here same time on Monday, so looking forward to working through and thinking through the end and the entirety of this with you. Cheers, buddy. Alright, Grail, I have a few more attempts in me if you want to try to see if we can make some progress on this. Otherwise, we can just call it and try to approach it with some more tact on Monday. Sure, no worries. What can I vamp about while Grail is writing out his last directional attempt? If you can believe it, it's almost exactly a month until Final Fantasy VII Rebirth comes out, speaking of other JRPG series and Final Fantasy. So I hope you're excited for it. I definitely am. If you are anxious about it or you have mixed feelings about Remake, I encourage you to read our work on it on With a Terrible Fate. I guess I can share it here while Pottery is typing, because I think it's fair to say that the general consensus around the publication is that it did some really thoughtful and ambitious and well-earned and well-executed things with storytelling that only that kind of game could. So encourage you to check out those articles and encourage you, as much as it's hard to say, do your homework. It's the kind of series, especially at this point and given where they're going, where I feel like you really will get so much more out of it if you have done your homework. And so even though I literally just played through all of the Final Fantasy VII series in 2022 for a lecture that Dan and I gave on that, I'm probably at least going to do some brushing up because I know I'll get much more out of it that way. So it's time to start doing that homework, looking at your calendars, if that's something that you're in for. I probably won't play through them all, given my other gaming schedule, but I imagine I know the base game quite well, and I know Remake quite well, but I might just throw on in the background while I'm working, like the key scenes from Crisis Core, and put Advent Children on in the background, and the scenes from Dirge of Cerberus, something like that. Alright, from the center. Go north. Go around the bend until you reach the split. And then go down and use the platform if you can. That platform I think we can use. Did you not type it right? Okay. Well, so we went around the bend and we reached the split, and then let's do the way you typed it out first. So go down, and then do we go down again? When you said around the bend, I think, yeah, okay, kind of ambiguous because the path splits there, but yeah, going around the bend and continuing north, that makes sense. And then down, I think, is, so we used this elevator before, so I know there's an elevator here. Okay. So we're here. Now this is one that I think forks. And I know we had, maybe it forks? Oh my god, leave me alone, enemy. Ah, we have too many things to deal with.
This is what happens when you misjudge your foe.
My friends. My friends. Alright, so what do we have here? Oh my god, bug, leave me alone. Alright, so this is the one that bottoms out in the chest.
Remember your training.
It's got me anxious because I think the only other path off this floor is a warp back up, but let's find out.
Measuring hand.
It's over! Rip to pieces! Stampede strike!
I think that's all of them.
Okay, you freaking beetles. Didn't even have to go this way. So the further away is up at the top. Question is, what, oh no, looks like that'll let us down. So maybe we're working with something here. Down, down, down. Alright. And you know, honestly, Grail, maybe that's part of it. Like, I feel like sometimes when fans make maps or navigation help for games with very complicated areas, they almost take this approach to it where they want to help you, but they also don't want to make it trivial for you. Like, they still want you to have to struggle a little bit to figure it out because they feel like that's part of the essence of the area. Which I get, but it's also, yeah, a little frustrating. So I think unfortunately this is not the path. Yeah, there's nowhere else to go here, and this is going to pop us back to the top. So that's okay. We certainly got to know this area and understand what it's all about. We got to know the enemies. We leveled up quite a bit. We had a lot of good conversations, especially about those resolution scenes, but there was some good stuff to dig into here too. So I think we can just regroup and ground ourselves over the weekend and then make an honest effort of it on Monday and hopefully, well, see if we can plow through the whole thing. And if not, I'm sure we'll at least make some progress. I really feel, just looking at the different floors that we have gotten to, I feel like that area I stumbled into really early on, where you even said, Grail, like, oh, I can't believe you got the correct way so soon, with the stairs that opened up. That felt right, which just makes it more confusing to me that we ended up back here right after that. But I feel like that's the closest I've seen to us making progress, at least. Yeah, okay, so you just typed the same thing I said. So I think we have to figure out how to go back there, which I think is down some ways, but we can make an effort to... Yeah, well, looks like it'll be an interesting puzzle for us to solve on Monday. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, it would be fun. We've talked about this before, but doing some kind of survey of the different approaches to puzzle solving in Tales games over the years and the different eras of Tales, because this kind of navigation puzzle, it's like, it's very different than the sorts of brain teasers you would get in earlier Tales games, but it is certainly melting my brain to try to figure it out. And all the different languages they have for puzzles that break you down in very different ways is interesting to experience. Certainly different from the amount of difficulty that the navigation in Tales of Arise gives you, as we argued about back when we were doing Beyond the Dawn. Alright, well, I'm going to save one more time because I'm a paranoid son of a bitch after struggling and only gaining experience in that hellscape for that long. But, you know, that's the other part. We're doing a study of the full experience of the series, and really, if we didn't struggle over the puzzles, we wouldn't be getting a full experience of everything that Tales has to offer you, because that's certainly part of it as well. Oh, there you go. And so in that sense, they're also going out with a bang. I didn't realize it was the last one. But yeah, I'm enjoying the navigation in Hearts R, and knock on wood, I haven't gotten this disoriented yet, but I'm also just cracking the surface of Hearts R, so knock on wood. Don't hold me to that. Yeah, exactly. Very different sorts of puzzles. That's what I mean. All right, well, Grail, thank you for being my compass and struggling with my disorientation. along with me. All the better when you're not in it alone. As I was saying with the writing, so too with the game navigation. It's all connected, my friend. Pottery, so great hanging and chatting with you. It's always a pleasure. As I said, I hope you have a great housewarming this weekend. It's awesome to be able to dig into what I will remind viewers is a brand new piece of Tales content for me. For the first time on the stream and talking about and working through all these great relationships, not knowing where it's going, not knowing how to get to the end of the dungeon, but knowing that chances are good something great awaits us there. The third time, oh my goodness. Well, Grail, I will say that as much as anything is a testament to the value that you obviously see in Tales of Praxis. So I don't know how I managed to do that for you, but I'm grateful that you see something worthwhile in this, my friend, because I don't know if anything could bring me back for a third time to a struggle such as this, but I'm glad you're enjoying it, or enjoying the worstness of it at least. Maybe it's something where like misery loves company, so you can at least enjoy me also having a bad time with it. But a rewarding bad time, and that's half the struggle. All right, well, my dear friends, what a pleasure, what a great way to spend a Friday night with you. Yeah, I was saying this was a new piece of Tales content, and that's something that I was thinking about, like I said, in reflecting and thinking about doing best games for the last year too, because I think so often these days we are biased to play the new thing as soon as it comes out and then just rank whatever new things we experienced that year, like games that were released in 2023 for our best games of 2023. But I think the fact of the matter is there's such a diverse wealth of games across all the years at this point, and only a finite amount of time we have to play them, that especially when it comes to series that we know quite well, when we sit down and play something new in that series for the first time, that in many ways is certainly as valuable, if not more valuable, than a game that we would pick up and play simply because that's the year it happened to come out and we were looking for something new. So if and when I do release a top games of 2023, look for Aaron's first experiences with new Tales titles nestled in there right alongside games that actually came out in 23. But I hope you have a great weekend. I hope you think well, game well, write well, if you're in a boat such as myself and Grail. And I, on the other side of that, like I said, hopefully Monday, if not certainly thereabouts, we'll have a new contribution to the other side of this series, the analytical articles. So if you love Tales, if you love looking back to the origin stories of series in terms of the places where they all began, or indeed, if you're a fan of characters who are unsung, maybe not getting the attention you'd like them to get, but not getting that attention in a way that it turns out means a hell of a lot for the story. That's as much as I'll say about this article, but it's an article that was, in that case, meant for you. I'm so excited to send it out there, see what you think, and chat about it with you as we dig into a new year of Tales of Praxis. It only gets richer and more rewarding for me as we have more shared background context of these games, so I hope it's the same for you as well. You have a great night too, Grail. Always a pleasure. And to all of you out there lurking or watching the VOD, so too with you. Think well, game well. We'll be back. Same time, 7 p.m. Eastern on Monday. Till then, friends, I'm Aaron Suduko. I've been your host. This has been Tales of Praxis. Go check out withaterriblefate.com. Feed your gamer brain this weekend. We'll see you again soon. Cheers.